but since we have a presentation, we're going to start the meeting. So I'm going to call to order the regular meeting. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Bowles.
Here.
Councilmember Big Stick will be present later. Councilmember Beer.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer.
Present.
Mayor Vaterlas.
Here. And I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. The City of Pacifica acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone people for their enduring commitment to Mother Earth. As the indigenous protectors of this land and in accordance with their tradition, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all people who reside in their traditional territory. We affirm their sovereign rights as First People and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. And now, Councilmember Bowles is going to lead us in the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now we're going to have a special presentation. Elise, Anthony. This is the Nonprofit of the Year Award by Assembly Berman's office to the Pacific Beach Coalition.
Awesome. Good evening, Mayor Vaterlaus and members of council. It is a great honor to be here this evening to commend an extraordinary organization that has made remarkable contributions to our community and the environment. On behalf of Assemblymember Mark Berman and the California State Assembly, I am proud to recognize the Pacific Beach Coalition as Assembly District 23's Nonprofit of the Year for 2024. On June 5th, the Pacific Beach Coalition was celebrated at the state capitol in Sacramento for their outstanding dedication to preserving our coastal environment and fostering community engagement through education, advocacy, and action. Their relentless efforts have not only safeguarded our beaches and reduced pollution, but have also instilled a profound sense of environmental stewardship within our community. The Pacific Beach Coalition's endeavors are truly inspirational. Through their cleanup initiatives, habitat restoration projects, educational programs, and advocacy efforts, they have involved countless individuals across the entire Bay Area in the conservation of our coastline. These activities have significantly contributed to the health and beauty of our local beaches, creeks, trails, and oceans, ensuring that these natural treasures remain pristine for future generations. This resolution acknowledges the exceptional dedication of the Pacific Beach Coalition in championing the respectful treatment and stewardship of our coastal environment. It serves as a testament to their unwavering commitment to environmental preservation and community service. With 44,813 pounds of trash and recyclables and 234,117 cigarette filters prevented from entering the ocean throughout San Mateo County in 2023 alone, their impactful work stands as a shining example of how local action can lead to significant positive change. Congratulations to the Pacific Beach Coalition on this well-deserved recognition. We are profoundly grateful for your contributions to Assembly District 23 and the City of Pacifica. Thank you for your leadership, dedication, and tireless efforts. You have made a lasting impact on our broader community, and we look forward to supporting your ongoing initiatives. Thank you.
Lynn, proceed. Thank you.
On behalf of all of the Pacific Beach Coalition, there's a few of us here, on the organizers and the site captains and the volunteers behind the scenes. I just want to say thank you for this acknowledgement here at City Council, and also by Assemblyman Berman. It's a great honor. We have worked very hard for this award, and there's a lot more to do. And we're really grateful to be still in service. So thank you.
Thank you. And wait. Lynn. Council.
We need to say nice things to you. We're so inspired. And we spoke after you received the award in Sacramento. I was so proud to see you there in those photos and to know how well you are representing all of San Mateo County. I mean, we want to, take super pride in you because Pacifica, but the service that you're providing for our youth, the opportunities, the education that you're doing for all of our community is outstanding. You deserve every accolade, and thank you so much for your leadership, your vision, for the fantastic team that you've built, and all that you contribute to our community.
Thank you so much. I have to say that it's the team that does make the dream work. So thank you to our team.
Thank you so much, everyone in the Pacific Beach Coalition. I can't remember a time without the Beach Coalition. It seems like ever since I started, really paying attention and doing advocacy in the city, you all were there too. And I think that's so beautiful. 240-something thousand cigarette butts
In 1 year?
in 1 year. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It is. It really is. It really is. Thank you for being out there and cleaning up after 4th of July. It was a pleasure to join folks in that cleanup effort and to see everybody out there. Historically, I have been able to honor my family through the Beach Coalition, and that has been a beautiful experience. It continues to be a beautiful experience for me, for my students, and for my family. So I love all of you. Thank you so much for your service, and it's really great to have Assemblymember Berman's staff here, so thank you so much.
I'm so proud of you and the whole organization. Every person. I'm privileged because I'm your liaison and get to go to the meetings and hear every month the amazing team that it takes to put together the cleanups, but also like brainstorming. What's our next animal of the year? And we're going to find that out this week. How to inspire our students to want to learn about the ocean and to be the next generation that doesn't just look at a pile of trash and say, oh, somebody left a mess, but hey, I can do something. I'm going to pick it up and prevent it from going in and harming other creatures. It's such a joy to see you recognized, not just here in Pacifica or the other cities where you also work, Daly City and Foster City, but countywide and statewide. Thank you, Elise, for being here, and Anthony, too, from Josh Becker's office. And thanks to Mark for recognizing what an amazing organization you are and giving you a platform at the state level, too, right? Because what you've created here can grow all over the world. You are such an inspiration.
Thank you.
You, Lynn, and the whole team.
Thank you so much.
Can I say one thing really quick? And I noticed on the award, there's poppies on it. It's so
that wonderful?
pretty. Yeah, it's not like a regular, award. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
So, yeah, that matches the work you do.
Really beautiful.
Tiger.
Yeah, thank you, and I apologize for arriving late and not hearing the proclamation and catching half of what my fellow council members had to say. But you're Lynn Adams, and this is the Beach Coalition, so I feel like that's one where I don't need to thoroughly be here to know how deeply this community benefits, values you, values the work you do, values the group you have cultivated, and your colleagues have cultivated, and ultimately the way you have knit together our community around conserving and properly taking care of our beaches.
It's a wonderful team.
It is. And as somebody who has, at least picked up a couple of those cigarette butts, you organized the reason that it occurred to me to do that. Not that I don't want to make a difference, but you gave me the opportunity. It inspired me to be there. It inspired my company to be there so that my company is making it happen.
Yeah.
So just, it could go on all night. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just did a beach cleanup 2 weeks ago, and we were only out for an hour and a half, and we filled our cigarette container this full with butts. We had no methods of picking them up other than our fingers. So it was surprisingly a lot of work, and I couldn't walk the next day, but hey. But it was well worth it. I've done it before, and I'll do it again, and I thank your whole team. And not only when you do a beach cleanup, then you learn, you get lessons after too. Which of these really are recycling, which aren't? Do you have to clean out the crud out of the containers to put it in recycling? And it was probably I put more things in recycling than I should. So I also learned a lesson, and I thank you all the time. And when I walk, I rarely see any trash at all. So I think that's a testament to you guys.
It's a lot better.
Yes,
It's light years better, and yet there's so far to go.
it's amazing.
Yeah, thank
So,
you.
Let's take a picture too. And then we'll take a picture, and then you can have all your whole team come up again, and we'll take another one.
Thank you. Good to be seen. Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is a consent calendar. Items 1 through 8 are on the consent calendar. And, and item number 3, to continue the proclamation of local emergency on Carmel must be approved by a 4/5 vote. Is there any council member who would like to remove anything from the consent?
Wait. Item
Mayor Vaterlas, just to
4.
clarify, that's item number 4,
Item 4.
not 3.
I can't read.
It's okay. It's all right. We got you. I actually have a question on that one, so
Wait.
I don't know if we have to take it up separately or what.
Okay.
It says number 3 on the script. Just
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to approve everything? Or do you just have questions? Or you want to remove it from consent?
I don't need to remove it. I just wanted a little, if we could, a little tiny overview, because I know this came up on our last agenda, and I wonder what the progress is, and if we can just, for the public, just have a quick,
Yeah, absolutely. I think Deputy Director Sun can provide the detail, but with an emergency ratification like this, the requirement is that we continue that emergency at every city council meeting
until it's resolved.
until it's resolved. Correct.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. Louis Sun, Deputy Director, Public Works, Wastewater. So a couple of weeks ago, staff was doing routine inspection on Carmel Avenue. In the sewer line, they discovered there were several, we call it a grade 5 sewer defect in the main sewer line, which require immediate action. Most of them are sort of corrosion, erosion, and at points where the sewer line is no longer functioning, and it could potentially leak, and the sewage could leak out. So that's the emergency. So we took immediate action, and contractor is currently working on that, and they're about halfway done. And we're expecting about another week or two for this emergency repair to be completed.
And this is, if I understood the staff report, this is work that you do routinely when we're doing street work, checking the sewer lines, and that's how this issue is discovered?
That's correct. We do routine CCTV in our sewer collection system, and during this process, this is when we discover these defects.
So the system's working as it should. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make any comments on the consent agenda? Seeing no one in the audience, is there anyone on, and no one on the phone, I'll bring it back to council. Now I'll ask if someone would like to make
I
a
move
motion.
we approve the consent calendar.
I second.
Please vote.
And with the consent calendar moved to approve by Councilmember Beer and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer, the vote passes unanimously.
With the extra person. The ghost, yeah. Thank you. And now, public comment. So this portion of the agenda is available for public to address the city council on any issue that is not on the agenda. Any person wishing to address the council shall be recognized by the mayor during this time, provided, however, that only items not on the agenda for that meeting may be addressed. Comments on non-agendized items must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If comments do not address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city will provide you with an initial warning to stay within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If the warning is not followed, the mayor will direct the city clerk to cut off the microphone. Council members shall not enter into a debate with speakers under public comments on items not on the posted agenda. A maximum of 3 minutes will be allowed per speaker. And Kevin, did you have a statement to make now?
Yeah, Mayor Vaterlos and council members, I wanted to, in the event that there are residents from the Valamar neighborhood here to talk about the Clare Creek Park, which was talked about at the last council meeting, I wanted to make sure in advance to repeat what the information that I had provided at the last city council meeting, which is that the city continues to research that issue, as was mentioned, because many of them maybe didn't hear the update, because many had left before my communications last council meeting. After receiving information, the city did additional research at the county recorder's office to locate appropriate documents. That information's being reviewed currently, and once that review is complete, the information will be communicated to those residents who had inquired.
Thank you. Okay, we have Aaron Clark, followed by Jeff Moroso and Errol Hunter.
Well, that statement changes my speech a little bit, but nonetheless, I've read the email that was sent to the city council members, and in the email it says that the document that the city denied existed, it says it suggests that the city might have maintenance responsibilities there. Well, the document doesn't suggest anything. It definitively states that the city has maintenance obligations there. There is no suggestion. And the interesting thing about it is you can, we all heard that you can't, pound a square peg into a round hole. But the truth is we all know that you can if you hit it hard enough with a big enough hammer and you don't care about the damage you do in the process. The city manager is using the city attorney as a hammer to try to pound a square peg into a round hole because in my opinion, I could be wrong, but they have a no maintenance agenda. They're getting rid of the Public Works Department, they've gotten rid of all the equipment, and they're not doing maintenance anywhere in town. It's not just Clara Creek Park. That's just one example. I have many more examples I'm going to bring forward in future meetings. But they spent a lot of money on staff time at this point. I would imagine with lawyer fees and whatnot, what are we at, $10,000 now to research a document? This was settled 25 years ago. The city's been maintaining it for 60 years. It doesn't even matter at this point who owns the property. The city is responsible for the condition of that property. And so they're proposing the biggest policy change since the city stopped doing sewer laterals. But when the city quit doing sewer laterals, there was a phase-out program. There was a lot of discussion. There was, first they went to 4 feet, then they're not going to do them anymore, but they gave everybody a free lateral, one-time lateral. And there was a financial program that allowed people to, that didn't have money to do lateral repairs where the city assisted with that. There was a lot involved in that. These people went out and changed a massive city policy without talking to anybody about it, and they sent a letter out that was the most insulting letter I've ever read, and I'll paraphrase it because I don't have time to read it, but the paraphrase of that letter basically said, ha ha, too bad for you. And an amazing attitude for the city to have. No discussion about, yeah, we maintained it for 60 years. Yeah, maybe we want to switch ownership. Maybe we can assist with this or that. Maybe we'll have public discussions. Nothing. Nothing like that. They just literally said, we're not going to do maintenance anymore. Ha ha, too bad for you. Oh, thanks for the new city hall, by the way. Thanks for our new offices that cost the city millions of dollars. So that, that's it for tonight. And I'll be back again. So there we go.
Thank you. Jeff Moroso, Errol Hunter, and then Cliff Lawrence.
Hello, I'm Jeff Moroso. This is concerning Clara Creek Park. Roland Yip sent out letters saying the city does not own Clara Creek Park and will no longer maintain it, even though the city has been maintaining it for over 60 years. We now have this document, mentioned by the city manager there, authored by Osa Wolf and Winter King, 2 women partners in the law firm Shute, Mihaly, and Weinberger on Hay Street in San Francisco. They prepared this document for the city of Pacifica in 2007. It goes through all the details with maps and attachments, and in summary states that the city of Pacifica owns Clara Creek Park by a quit-claim deed. I spoke with Roland Yip at the grand opening of our beautiful new $13 million civic center, and he confirmed that he had found the quit-claim deed in question. Unless something has changed between 2007 and now, this is the answer. The city owns Clara Creek Park and should take ownership and do everything in their power to properly maintain it. How did the city think otherwise? This is the first time in over 30 years that I have lived here that the city did not mow the weeds and grass around Clara Creek Park before the 4th of July fireworks. This is very short-sighted and increases the city's liability. We are waiting for the city attorney to confirm the findings in this document. I believe the city owes us a full investigation, explanation, and report of how they got this so wrong, how much city time was wasted trying to avoid their legal responsibilities. How long is it going to take the city manager, city attorney, and the head of public works to figure out what a huge mistake this was and that they owe the people of Pacifica a huge apology? We have a group we are calling Friends of Clara Creek Park. We had a large cleanup on Earth Day, April 20th, 2024. We are scheduled for another one on July 20th. We are in touch with Pacific Beach Coalition to become a project of the Pacific Beach Coalition. We have an offer from Nico's Hauling to take our green waste to a city dump site. We would like to work with a functioning Public Works Department for a win-win solution. We have a lot of motivated people who are willing to help. We would love for the city to provide a mower, and we could have authorized trained volunteers help the Public Works Department maintain Clara Creek Park. Let's all work together for a win-win solution. Thank you for your time serving on the City Council. I'm sure it's not easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Earl Hunter, and then Cliff Lawrence.
Hello, council members. Earl Hunter, Valamar, also here to speak about Clara Creek. Once again, straight out of the gate, I want to thank you all for your service. Just acknowledge that what you guys do is not easy, and it is very much appreciated, definitely by me and by a lot of other folks as well. With that said, I just want to reiterate some of my comments from the last meeting, which is I believe that this issue has, in my mind, at least three dimensions to it. One being, the legal question, whose property is it, right? I think the second, the second legal aspect of it is whose liability is it? It's one thing to say that, a homeowner is responsible financially for the maintenance of these gigantic trees. It's another thing to say who is legally liable if there's injury or property damage as a result of a branch falling or a tree falling. And once again, one of the, I believe, incidents that sparked one of our neighbors to call into Public Works and get the letter from Mr. Yip in the first place was a huge branch that fell across from my house, right? That could have been my kid in the creek. That could have been me, because I help maintain the creek as well. It could have been me, and I know having had to move it, I had to chainsaw it into 3 different pieces just to move it. I'm not a small guy. This was a huge limb. This would have killed somebody, right? And so, so yes, the financial responsibility is one thing, but legally speaking, who is liable for injury or property damage? Second aspect is, regardless of what the legal answer is, the question I have for all the council members here is a matter of fairness. Is it really fair to put the maintenance of these gigantic trees on the homeowner who lives across the street from the creek? These are massive trees. And then third and finally, if somehow we get past those two issues, the legal and the fair, is this the right due process? This, to echo some of the comments by some of my neighbors, just all of a sudden after 6 decades of maintenance, there's just this one letter that says, hey, we're not going to do it anymore. Good luck. I just don't think that's the right due process. Surely there's more. There's some due process we can leverage that'll invite more public comment, be more transparent. There are hundreds of homes lining Clara Creek up and down Valamar, right? I would bet you anything that most of them have no idea about this conversation and no idea that the Public Works Department considers maintenance of these gigantic trees and the rest of Clara Creek their responsibility. Once again, thank you very much for your service, and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Cliff Lawrence.
Good evening, Cliff Lawrence here. Over the weekend, there was an item that appeared in the San Francisco newspaper saying that San Francisco has become the first city to get penalized, to be subject to penalties because of not meeting their housing goals. Well, I don't know what our chances of meeting our housing goals are. I believe that there's a midpoint in the cycle that the penalties kick in. And what that could mean to us, it's frightening enough what it would mean to San Francisco. But I'm looking at a lot of the things that we've taken for granted here, that we could protect our hills or whatever. And we're going to give carte blanche to these developers. I see a number of them, I believe personally, have speculatively applied claiming SB 330 rights. I'm a little confused how one who went off the sheet on that claim is back on the active applications with that claim again. And I would like that reviewed, because I can't find any documents that are revealed to the public that support that they made their deadline or that they reapplied. We can't be so loose with this. They're going to take advantage of us. We got to hold. If we can't do our housing thing right, we got so much going here, and we got to stay out of losing lawsuits. Unfortunately, we should have spent our money working with the other cities who were fighting the RENA numbers. And they're in the middle of the 7th cycle now, and are planning the cycle 7. I don't see any chance that they're going to give us some relief from the penalties that we're currently subject to. I would like them to hold that in abeyance till they figure this out, but they know they've got the RENA numbers wrong, and I don't see any clemency here for us or any city. So buckle up. Thank you.
Thank you. Remy Tan, and that's the last card I have.
Good evening, Honorable City Council. Again, thanks for your service. A couple of things I came up this week. I noticed I was driving out to to go to Frontierland, to the wonderful July 4th celebration there, and got stuck in some pretty horrific traffic from basically around where the nursery is all the way down to Lindemar. And I remember conversations we've had in the past, especially about the stretch between Reno Del Mar and Rockaway. Is there's no room for a fire truck or emergency vehicle to pass when that traffic is stopped bumper to bumper. So just kind of wondering, if we've talked to Caltrans about maybe installing some traffic circles between Reno Del Mar and Lindemar and getting rid of these traffic lights so the traffic, we have traffic calming, yet the traffic moves at a slower but steady pace through the area. So hopefully there are some conversations going on with that respect. The other issue is the fireworks, which we keep hearing them, not only 4th of July, but it looks like, every weekend evening, probably because the 4th got fogged in and a lot of people didn't shoot their fireworks up. But, with the grass issue, it's, really scary problems. And we had a fire, I think, last year behind Councilman Bowles' house, I recollect, up in the hill. So hopefully, the police is, doing a zero tolerance on that issue before we have a pretty bad disaster. And also I want to comment on Cliff's comment about the housing. What I understand is SB 423, Scott Wiener's housing, means that San Francisco has to basically approve all projects as of right. They don't go through planning commission. If it's within the zoning envelope, they go directly to the building department to pull the building permit, which is good. It expedites, gets the housing done. But what it means is we need to be really vigilant to make sure our zoning regulations really tight and there are no loopholes in that. So that's probably something council and planning department wants to look at, after we get over the hump with the housing element and the local coastal plans, to really make sure our zoning and codes are really tight. Thank you.
Thank you. Calvin Chan. Now that's the last one.
Good evening. I would like to hand you an accompanying visual before I start my speech. Good evening, City Council members, City staff, and City Manager. My name is Calvin Chan. As a member of Pacifica's Youth Advisory Board and Terra Nova High School Student Council, I am one of many youth who care about our local city and environment, and thus support its Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Task Force.
Wait. That is on our agenda, the climate action. That's item number 9. So thank you for getting up. I do have your card for item number 9.
Okay.
So we're going to do a couple of public or other additional comments, council comments and staff comments, and then we'll call you back up.
Great.
Okay, and now we have the form in front of us. So thank you.
Mayor Vaterlaus.
Is there anyone on the phone?
We have one hand raised. Dan Stedgen.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, council members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Good evening. My name is Dan Stedgick. I'm an environmental advocate out of Lindemar. I urge this council do not endorse nor vote for Regional Measure 4, the 9-county, $20 billion BAFA bond. Regional Measure 4, or RM4, will cost the median new SMC homeowner between $42,000 and $72,000. Every 1050 square foot rancher in Lindemar will pay at least $20,000. It makes housing for both homeowners and renters more expensive. RM4 waives your right to constitutionally vote on low-income housing projects like the La Quinta Inn and Project Home Key. Finally, RM4 makes housing for both homeowners and renters more expensive. It costs too much, does too little, and funds BAFA, a brand new bureaucracy that has never built a house or apartment building until 2077. This November, vote no on Regional Measure 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Now, is there anyone else with their hand raised?
There are no other hands.
Okay, now I'm going to bring it back to council for council communications. Tiger?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize for arriving a bit late tonight. Arriving a bit disheveled. I spent the weekend visiting holy ground. First of all, we don't usually do much back and forth, but and I feel a certain sort of, I'm going to talk a little different tonight because I feel in the mood, if that's okay. Cool. But when I heard one of the members of the community say that the feeling he got from reading a letter about the Valamar situation was, haha, too bad for you. And we hear comments, we agree, we disagree, but what I heard was a feeling. This is the way this made me feel. And as somebody who has a day job and conducts himself in a professional capacity, I tend to be fairly aware, even if I don't have the clarity of sight to do it a better way, when I invoke such feelings in my customers. And not that's the same, but I hear that, and I hear that we're working on trying to figure out what is, what ain't. There's a legal construct we have to work within. And I think that, for me, I want to acknowledge that feeling, and heaven knows he's not the only one who's expressed that, but that was well encapsulated with that one phrase, I thought. And so I think that council is watching acutely and has inquired that we take a step back, staff does the investigation they need to, and we figure out how to recalibrate as a community around it. Because I think that in my professional daily life, as of like a week ago, it was very easy for me before having this kind of cleansing experience to lose track of the fact that my job is dead in the middle of the community. And as I get lost in my professional morass in that moment, I forgot how to be a community member. And I think that a part of what we're doing here is trying to remind each other how to be a community. So I visited what for me is sacred ground. And it occurred to me that there is a lot of underlying fear going on, at least in my brain, my head. And that stems in part from very big, up to entire world, down to entire nation, down to entire state. Thank you for reminding us about the housing element, which has been such a charming process for all of us, and down to community, trickle down, if you will. So as I've been meditating upon this, I have some observations, and Madam Mayor, if I may continue in this fashion. Thank you. A couple of phrases that stuck to me over the course of the weekend. One is, good is stronger than evil, but not by much. And I was reminded of another line from a song, all it takes is the weight of a feather to tip the balance in the favor of love. And there was one more phrase that popped out at me this weekend. What makes this country great is what we are also most afraid of. Our people. So, my family background, you know, by the way, when you're up here doing this thing, you're always trying to figure out, well, what's the version of me that's best going to convey to the community what I'm trying to convey? It's not a matter of wanting to be duplicitous, it's a matter of wanting to communicate adequately. And the conclusion I came to after having this massive thought process all weekend long is maybe I want to try and let some of myself out to communicate. And my family background is one in which we got to experience a genocide recently, you know, like 100 years ago or so. But when you're 3 generations out, that's still recently. And one of the things I didn't mention when we were doing the ceasefire resolution is that, you know, I can kind of relate to the notion that these people who are being murdered over there. And I was having a conversation with a customer, and he's like, well, even if by the Geneva Convention it's not a genocide, it's a de facto genocide, and I couldn't really argue with that. And I'm like, okay, so on a good day, these people 3 generations out get to deal with the same head trip that, you know, I get to deal with, and I'm up here being a leader and having, you know, a pretty good life, but I can relate, right? And so as somebody who's coming from a background where in my recent family past, and I'm calling 100 years recently, there was a genocide. My family got annihilated, except for like that one guy. Maybe there were a couple other people who I've never met. I don't know. And because of that one guy, I'm here. And as I'm looking at the national politic, I'm looking at our choices and thinking, well, depending on how this goes, I wonder if my family's going to be targeted again. That's the fear I carry. It's not a reflection on anybody who's listening and what the reality is going to be and whether or not, you know, I have any insight into truth. It's a matter of the fear I get to carry because of my family background. And then I'm at the grocery store trying to do my job. And there are people who I serve who I know support the person who I'm thinking, I wonder if this is going to have that kind of effect on my family. And as I'm having that thought process and serving these people, one of them turns to me and wishes me a happy 4th of July, pats me on the back. Another one, every time he walks in the store, he shakes my hand. Another one, I'm having a civil conversation with serving every day. And number one, it's important to me that I express that if things go as badly as my sense of fear says they could, just maybe we have a sense of survival if we come together as a community. And even though I vehemently disagree with your politic, I vehemently, deeply love you and respect the fact that you're a human being experiencing the same kind of pains that we all get to experience, because I don't care which human you are, it hurts to live. And we may disagree on the solution to that, but we need to acknowledge that. Start there. So I'm on holy ground, and I'm schlepping some chairs from point A to point B, and I hear my name. I actually met a handful of people there I wasn't expecting to. And I look up, and there's a coastal commissioner staring at me. And, he expressed a desire to maybe do a little bit more human interaction than just talking shop while we're there. But in that moment, I was able to share to him, well, look, a lot of what's going on in my community is this mistrust thing. And it translates in every direction, regardless of whether or not you mistrust the Coastal Commission or the way everyone's interpreted or whatever. There's a lot of mistrust. And so I'm communicating to him in those 2 minutes I had, how valuable it is that I should surreptitiously run into him on sacred ground, because that tells me his character and deepens our connection. And then I think to myself, oh yeah, I'm hearing that he's a terrorist. My brother, who I just ran into on sacred ground, is a terrorist. And so now this is my thought process. I'm not accusing somebody right now, right? But my thought process goes, well, if he's a terrorist, then whoever's accusing my brother of being a terrorist must be a demon. And then I stop and I see what my brain is doing. And I go, well, I don't think that's fair. But the person accusing my brother of being a terrorist, while not a demon, apparently has let fear get the best of him to a point that he is dehumanizing who otherwise is my brother, to a point that it's not helping me do my job, and it's not helping us become a community that figures it out. I don't have the luxury of knowing what the right solution is this far out or whether or not we're going to come to it, but I know what it feels like when efforts are collaborative, we put forth good faith efforts, and I also know what it feels like when fear gets the better of me. And so rather than accusing somebody of being a demon for calling my friend a terrorist, I would invite anybody to hopefully take a moment to acknowledge where fear may undermine communication that may be more helpful, if nothing else. And so I'm on my sacred ground. And I see this person walk by with a t-shirt for some reason, screw you and screw you for, no, screw this person and screw you for voting for this person was essentially what the t-shirt said. And that starts a thought process. Oh, I wonder if this person's going to go and get a gun and start shooting up this place I'm at. Because that's the level of fear right now. And then I think, no, that's not it. This is holy ground. I should not be afraid of that, and what's more, I should notice how afraid this person is that they are capable of just picking fights now because they can't see anything better than that. So, I'll start wrapping it up. And I apologize for those of you who don't like that I've gone off the beaten path, but to me this has been very important. And as I'm looking at the nation's choice between grandpa with dementia and the Antichrist, it occurs to me that we can do better right here in our community where we are. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because I love doing this job. And when I began doing this job, I did not have a family to think about, and today I do. And while I have not made a decision definitively, I reached out to somebody with a suggestion, and regardless, I know somebody else felt like running, and I'm not going to specify who and what and how, but I know that these two really good human beings are going to be at least running simultaneously for the seat and perhaps against each other. Again, I haven't quite decided yet. So Mark Hubble and Greg Wright are two really good human beings who really care about this community, are really intelligent, really love this community. And I think that, maybe somebody else will enter the race, who knows, but these are two very worthy candidates. And if the community shall fill them with as much love as possible, that they may do an adequate job, then perhaps while we're contemplating from whatever side you're on, whether or not as a nation we have serious issues, and God knows we do. Here in our community, we might do very well to remind each other that both candidates are quite good, and to give them both the love that they need to not only arrive in fashion, but do the job well. Start building bridges like our lives depend on it. I don't know if my fear is warranted or not, but even if it isn't, even if we're doing as good as we can, let's try to do better. Thank you for allowing me an exorbitant amount of time.
Well, that's a hard one. Hard to follow you, Tiger. Thank you. And Calvin, if you're still out there, do I see you, Calvin? Thank you so much for coming out, for preparing to come out. I can't wait to hear your comment. So just so you know, it's like a process that you get to speak during the actual item on our agenda. So don't think that we just shooed you away, because we're really happy that you're here. So thank you so much for that. I feel like the last couple of weeks I didn't have a whole lot on my calendar, which is actually really refreshing. But I do want to thank everybody for the 4th of July celebration, especially the shuttle drivers, because I got really lucky, and as soon as I walked up, the shuttle driver was there, and he brought me to the top, and then I went, and I walked around, and then I came back to the parking lot, and he was there again. So I didn't have to walk up the hill, and I didn't have to walk down the hill. So that was really great, because then I had to go to Lindemar Shopping Center and sell fireworks for Pacifica school volunteers and Pacifica girls softball. And what an interesting experience selling fireworks on 4th of July. It was actually really fun. Like, people were very excited, and the amount of money that folks spend on fireworks, I don't know why it still surprises me, but it does. But I will say that interacting with the community, and there were a lot of people from outside of the community who were coming to buy fireworks, it was just really fun, just to be out there. So it was fun to be at the park, and it was fun to be at the booth, and I hope that all of our nonprofits fared well from the fireworks sale. To my Valleymar residents, my fellow Valleymar residents, again, please, I want to be involved with the creek cleanups or whatever you're doing with the Beach Coalition. Please include me. I would love to speak to all of you. I think I said it the last time we were here, that those trees in Valleymar have always been one of my biggest fears as a child growing up, and one of my biggest joys as an adult, to see how beautiful they are. And so I look forward to all the conversations that we're going to have, and I would love to have more conversations with you all. So perhaps we can have a little community meeting and invite me. That would be great, because I want to be a part of that conversation. I attended When Everyone Leads, which was a follow-up from a weekend workshop that I got to do, which is leading into the Leadership Core program that I've been accepted to, and I'm really excited to be starting that again. It's going to fill my cup and help me reconnect with people across the county and learn different ways that I can serve my community, because that is really what it's all about. And I think that's what it felt like I was doing at the fireworks booth, was maybe, that's what I love to do, is to be of service, and it really was wonderful. And I'm of service in other ways, like I am a member of the Coast Pride Board of Directors, and we had our meeting. I'm very proud of all the work that they're doing. They did receive some Measure K funding, so that's really good news, because there was a lot of Measure K applicants and not a lot of money, so we got pretty lucky with that. I did have a call with Sam Licardo. Did I say that right? And so that was really nice to get to know him. And we all did the LCLUP briefings and meetings and that was long and hard for us. Thank you for PD and Fire and for the Beach Coalition for the cleanup and for keeping us safe on 4th of July. I think that's it. Thanks.
Go. I have a short one too, so hopefully we can catch up a little bit time-wise. But I want to thank Cliff Lawrence and Ramey Tan for speaking about the housing element, and we understand how important that is and the position we're in without a certified housing element. I just want to assure you that I'm asking those questions too, and hoping that we'll get back to that very soon. Yeah, after that marathon week of the LCLUP and the short-term rental, oh my God, it was the first agenda that I didn't finish reading. There was just too much in one week, and so it was nice to have a little bit of a quieter couple of weeks. The Civic Center ribbon cutting was super fun. We all enjoyed that and are just really so proud of the completion of that project. For those of you who weren't there, City Manager Woodhouse talked about what the building was like before, that the bathrooms were moldy and he couldn't use the bathroom in his building office, and he was on crutches and had to walk down the stairs across the lawn outside to the other building to go to the bathroom. So we can't ask that of our staff. And I think this is going to be a great investment in Pacifica's future for keeping our staff, but also for bringing investors and people into our city and showing them that we have a proud space, and you would do well to trust us with your investments. And anyway, hoping for some bright corners with those doors that are opened. I too met with Sam Licardo today, I think right after Sue Beckmeyer. We both walked Manor. You walked north and I walked south with him to the RV park and talked about our erosion issues and airplane noise and other things. And actually gave me some ideas for some funding that we'll talk about later. And then met with the Pacifica Climate Committee, some of whom are here tonight, and just wanted to advertise again on July 25th on Thursday night, hosting an event at the Sharp Park Library called Electrify Your Home. It's easier than you think. So there's a Pacifica residents who's recently switched their gas appliances to heat pump water heaters and furnaces, and really get into the nuts and bolts of how that's done. And then I've been asked by Peninsula Clean Energy and Sustainable San Mateo County to host tours of my net zero house for realtors in particular. And so that's going to happen on August 15th from 1 to 3. And so they're mostly handling the registration, but if there are a couple people that really want to attend that are in that line of work, let me know. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also want to thank staff for what a beautiful event the ribbon cutting was for Civic Center. I'm so sorry I didn't say anything about that, but it was really a joyous occasion. And I hadn't seen the buildings, and so I got to be ooh and ah with everybody else, and it was really fun. So thank you, everyone.
I don't have a lot to report. I've been out of town helping my mom with something out of state, and did have a few meetings before departing and a couple Zoom meetings. I just got back today. I do want to acknowledge the communication we're receiving from Valamar residents. I want to thank you for stepping forward and continuing to speak your truth. We don't know everything about everything. Big surprise. There's a lot of history in this town, a lot of knowledge, and we are all stronger by sharing that information. When mistakes are made, they get corrected. We're in the process, as Councilmember Big Stick said, of figuring that out. But it's important that we acknowledge that there's information the community often has that's in addition to that which the council has or has received. So we're working through this process, and I appreciate having the insight of those who've been here longer than I have and the background to help with that. I want to talk a little tiny bit about the Civic Center opening, because as much as I was personally rejoicing in that moment, and I hate to impose my opinions and my, joy on everyone else. Maybe everyone who was in that attendance didn't share my view. I understand $13 million is a lot of money, and I also understand it's far less than other communities in this county have spent on similar facilities. And so I just want to say that while it is one of the nicest looking and will be one of the best working venues for our city staff that I've seen, it's one of a few upgrades that we've had and that we've done that I'm aware of over time. And I feel like the way we go about doing it in this community is appropriate for Pacifica. So I've had commentary, everything from why did we even need to do this? There was no problem with those buildings that a sponge and some bleach wouldn't have taken care of. And I have to disagree with that position. It was a bigger problem than a little bit of mold on a wall. So thankfully, we were able to do what we needed to do within a $13 million budget. Thankfully, the problems weren't worse than they might have been once the walls came off. So I'm hopeful that we're going to have those buildings function long into the future, because the likelihood of any council wanting to endure the process of investing in city facilities for city workers isn't likely to happen. It didn't happen before this council took up that charge. There was a push. There was an employee health and safety issue push that pushed us. There's no lying and no hiding that fact. But the truth is, I've been watching councils for a while, and there was a very ill-fated, once upon a time, many years, decades ago, attempt to redo a civic center, and it right away met with a massive pushback from the community. The word Taj Mahal was thrown around. It was difficult. And I understand why. No other council touched that with a 10-foot pole until now. So I feel like the way we went about doing that project was actually appropriate for Pacifica. We financed part of it. We spent savings on part of it. And we did it in a way that reuse, reduce, recycle, repurpose. We didn't knock it down and start all fresh. We took what was available and improved it. So I'm proud of that. I had a few meetings. I did meet with Sam Liccardo. It was really a pleasure. Haven't had a chance to really talk with him much, except for in his social settings very briefly until today. Had an opportunity to show him some of the Esplanade area and bluffs. And I'm glad you followed, because then you could tell him all the technical stuff that I didn't really tell him. And said, oh, I'll get back to you on that. So, good. I wasn't aware that it was, I knew he had another meeting, I didn't know it was you. I did have a local government working group meeting, Zoom meeting during the week, leading up to, as I mentioned before, at our council meeting on the 26th, where we talked about the local coastal land use plan. There's going to be the meeting at the Coastal Commission on August 8th, talking about the neighborhood approach, a bit of a generic term for what you see, a version of which you see in our local coastal land use plan draft. And I don't think, I wasn't able to attend Council of Cities because I had another obligation that evening with the Rotary Club here in Pacifica. So I'm sorry that I missed that. I hope you were there? Oh, good. You can maybe mention about that, because it sounded like a fantastic event that maybe we could steal the idea and replicate in Pacifica. So thank you for enduring our commentary. I think it's important that you hear from us, sometimes technically off topic, because you need to understand that the people that sit in these chairs are in fact people and do have a well-rounded life beyond this service to this community. And we do bring our full selves here to the very best of our ability. And I want you to understand that we try. We're doing our best. Thanks. Oh, Library Outpost? Will you be able to give the specifics on that?
Communication.
You will. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But thank you for reminding me that the Beautification Advisory Committee work day is on the 14th, this coming Sunday on Palmetto. If you happen to be a member of a group or an individual that's adopted one of those bump outs, please turn up and work on it from 9 to 2 p.m. And Sarah will ably fill in my lack of information on the Library Outpost. Thank you for reminding. Thank you.
Okay. We did have a horrendous week because we started with short-term rentals, and we went into the fee schedule and the budget. So that was a really long night. Then we had local coastal update, which was another long night. And then we had the Civic Center opening. I only heard positive comments. Everyone was so happy. And I will tell you that in the beginning, in my speech, I said that I started on a committee with the City of Pacifica, and I couldn't find the exact date. It's between 20 and 25 years ago, because the Civic Center was moldy, it was falling apart, and that was 20 to 25 years ago. And so for people to say anything negative about that, you just don't know. So there were needs, and I was going to say the name of that committee, but we were trying to locate a new city services buildings because it was so bad. So I thought the event was wonderful, and thank you all for all the people who put it on and all the people who attended. It was so busy that I never even got the key. So, you know, I'll work on that because I do want one. I also met with Anna Eshu's office regarding some of our needs, which you were there.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. I was there.
We talked to staff about our needs, and it's really important. When we talk to staff, staff goes back and communicates that. We had a Sam Licardo, Jackie Spear, and Ray Mueller. Oh, you have an extra? Oh, I got a key. I got a key. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jackie Spear and Ray Mueller, we had a press conference out by the pier.
Oh, yeah.
It was really quite, yeah, you guys were there too. And Council of Cities in Millbrae was a good event. They have closed down a street. They actually closed 2 streets.
San Mateo,
In San Mateo.
city of San Mateo.
Oh, wrong city.
But we know where you were.
Yeah, I was in Millbrae. I didn't know where I was. I just drive with GPS. Close. They closed down 2 streets, and they did it for restaurants and stores to be outside. Right now, it's only working on 1 street, but they've painted this beautiful mural down the middle of the street. And if you could see pictures of it, it's all colors, and it represents every nationality that lives in San Mateo, wrong city. And it's beautiful, and it's not specific, but if you look at it and they just fade into each other, it's a really nice, I have a couple pictures. It's really a nice thing, and it honors everyone who lives there. I also went to Frontierland Park. I had a great time, and for some reason, someone pulled out at the very top right when I got there. So, I don't know. That was the parking ferries were on my side. And I had a great time. Last year I went down the giant slide. This year there was a long line. And next year they need 2 Mr. Softy trucks because there was an hour wait for Mr. Softy. The kids were having a great time. It was especially hot that day. So it was amusing to see everyone under the trees. There were big groups under all the trees because it was so hot, but everyone was having a great time. They did it all for free. Thank you, PB&R staff, everyone who was involved in that. They had watermelon eating, they had sack races, they had the rides, and everyone had a great time. And there were shuttles. So it makes it a lot easier for people to go up and down that hill because I couldn't have walked it. And then after that, we kind of missed the car parade. So we went after to see all the cars because there was a little bit of traffic on the highway. And so it took us so long to get there. And I would like to thank our previous city council for that mess. So, and that's it.
And thank you to Pacifica Hot Rods for another great car parade.
Okay. Okay, now on to staff communications. Too bad.
Thank you, Mayor Vaterlos and Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer and council members. Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. I wanted to augment some of the comments that were made by council members. First, to start with the Civic Center ribbon cutting and just acknowledge, thank you to the council for that fantastic event, but also to all the staff and the staff team that worked to put that event together.
Yeah.
And that included, of course, immense public works assistance, and PB&R contributed because they're the experts in planning fun events, and they were planning that event while getting ready for the 4th of July festivities as well as public works for that. So, but what I wanted to point out, which is a great keepsake for everyone, not just the key, but that Steve Johnson was the photographer for that event. So we're going to get some great photos for our records for that. But the one with the wide angle one that includes all of the attendees there, and I think there must have been over a couple hundred folks. We could count them up in that picture, but it was so well attended, and there's this great photo from him standing up on a ladder with everyone in it, and that was just pretty special. So it was a great day, capping off, as council members mentioned, a pretty rigorous week of difficult and late work. So that was great. And again, to the staff team from every department that worked on that, very much appreciated. The 4th of July events at Frontierland, again, Public Works, Parks, Beaches, and Recreation, of course, police and fire out for public safety on the 4th of July. So a great effort for that, and great attendance at Frontierland as well. As is typical, the fire department and police department are putting together their after-action summary data and information, so that'll be coming forth to the council soon. I also did want to mention, as was mentioned by the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, that over the last couple of weeks, we did have some pointed meetings with staff from Congresswoman Eshu's office, as well as staff from Senator Becker and Assemblymember Berman's office, to really go over in depth all of our coastal projects and initiatives, and they asked a lot of questions. The great thing about that is that, you know, they are watching and paying attention and very tuned in to what it is that we're trying to accomplish here in Pacifica, and it's great to have that collaboration with them. And last but not least, we have another ribbon cutting upcoming in partnership with county libraries, and that's the Sanchez Outpost, Library Outpost ribbon cutting on July 23rd. And to fill in the details, I'm going to turn to City Clerk Coffey to provide those details. And that completes my communications.
So a little about the Sanchez Library Outpost. The Sanchez Library Outpost is a 24/7 book kiosk that can be used with your library card. And you can check out books, you can return books through this kiosk. It's outside of the Sanchez Library. And you can place holds to pick up at the kiosk, so you don't need to visit the Sanchez Library during the open library hours. You can come pick up your book any day and any time. Library staff have been trained on it. It's all installed. The ribbon cutting for that event will be open to the public. It's on Tuesday, July 23rd from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. right outside the Sanchez Library. And I've heard that there will be, you know, a maker, possibly a maker mobile there. Mr. Softy may be there. So the San Mateo County Libraries are planning a great ribbon cutting event that anybody from the public is welcome to attend on Tuesday, July 23rd from 3 to 5 p.m. So we're excited to introduce this during the summer as part of the city's overall library modernization project. So hopefully this is the first to come. The exciting thing about the Sanchez Library Outpost is that it's the first of its kind in the Bay Area. So Pacifica really is on the cutting edge. I think that the closest one that's like this is in the Sacramento area. So this is the first in the San Mateo County Library System. It will have a hot spot where it's not just getting books from the kiosk, but it's a nice shaded area with seating, and you'll be able to connect and download, read ebooks as well from there, so you don't need to check out a physical book. It'll be a nice community space.
And Sarah, thank you for the key. I know that was your idea. They were beautiful.
Thank you.
And if council members did not receive one, then we do have some that we held back for you all. So see me or Emily if you need one.
Thank you. It was important to have one. Thank you. Is that it? Okay. Then we'll move along. And back. We have no public hearings, so we're going to go into our consideration items. And the first item is report to the City Council from the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Task Force. And if they could come forward.
All right. Good evening, Mayor. My name is Monica Maher. I am the chair of the Pacific Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Task Force, here to give you an update tonight, and just wanted to extend a thank you. I know you guys have struggled with my name in the past, and you got there, so I just really appreciate that, because I know it's a difficult name. So here's what we will be covering tonight. First, just kind of set the stage with climate action in Pacifica. You know, why are we doing this now? What is the work that the task force has done to date? So going over the scope, the timeline, the subcommittees that we've set up, and then how we're starting to put the report together and the next steps. So first, to set the stage, Pacifica completed their first climate action plan in 2014, and it had 15 greenhouse gas reduction measures that addressed emissions from energy, transportation, solid waste, and water. Since then, a lot has changed. There have been advances in science, in adaptation solution, costs, government funding and incentives. Here in Pacifica, a new general plan was adopted. So because of all of this, it was time to put together an updated climate action and adaptation plan. And this aligns Pacifica to be eligible for historic amounts of state and federal funding that's available for climate and adaptation-related projects and programs. I'm not going to read this is a lot of words, but I did just want to include this tonight. This is one of the first things the task force did. We took the directive from City Council and put a scope together in our own words, just to make sure that we were all aligned on what we were doing. So since our first meeting in September, the task force set up our necessary structures and subcommittees. We baselined the current status. We evaluated the 2014 Climate Action Plan, envisioned goals, action items, and evaluation criteria. After tonight's presentation, we're going to continue our work of drafting the plan and engaging the community around input and feedback. We're planning to have a draft to circulate both among City Council and the public in January, and ideally we'll be publishing the final Climate Action and Adaptation Plan in April. These are the subcommittees that we've had to date. So the strategy and actions is like our executive subcommittee, just kind of keeping us on task. Policies and regulations research they looked at all of the policy and regulation that's out there around sustainability and climate change to figure out, what the city needs to be doing anyway, kind of what are kind of our stretch goals. Research and data analysis looked at the 2014 CAP and said, where are we? How did we do? Kind of how many emissions can we say we achieved from that work? And then these next four that are highlighted in this box, these are aligned with the report sections, and I'll get to that, but these subcommittees support specific action item developments, kind of the main areas that we're focusing on. So clearly, we have a whole section just on community engagement and outreach. It's very important to us, so we have a subcommittee that's focused on that. We have resiliency and adaptation. They're looking at nature-based solutions and other ways that will incorporate resiliency and adaptation. Emissions reduction and energy, it's just a few words, but there's a lot in there because they're looking at emissions reductions from buildings, from water use, from waste, as well as just the energy that we use. And then transportation and land use is looking at how Pacifica can reduce vehicle miles traveled, as well as electrifying vehicles, both used by the community and the fleet of Pacifica City. We're not doing this alone. So I think that's just important to note. So we are part of the Regional Climate Action Planning Suite, or RICAPS. So RICAPS is a county-wide working group that is led by the San Mateo County Office of Sustainability, and they have a technical consultant to support that group. RICAPS also has a climate action plan template that's available. So we are using that template as the base of what we're doing, but we're certainly adding to it. We put in here, it's the template with enhancements. Two big areas that we're enhancing is the community engagement, like I mentioned, it's very important to us, as well as the adaptation, because that is just a climate action plan template, and we know that adaptation is a big piece of what we're doing, so that's also one of the main things that we're adding to that template. Another big piece of what goes into this is around the greenhouse gas emissions reporting. So RINCON, who is the technical support for the San Mateo County Office of Sustainability, they have been developing greenhouse gas inventories that are used across the county. So they break it out for the different cities. So we have their work to start with. That said, we do need to be able to forecast the future emissions and how we think the action items that we're proposing will reduce those future emissions. So we're evaluating, the possibility of continuing, of furthering the work with RINCON. Pacifica is also now part of the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, or ICLEI, so they also have a tool. So we're figuring out what tool makes the most sense for us to use to include this data in the report. Also want to note that we are evaluating climate action plans and climate action and adaptation plans from other cities or counties, especially other coastal cities, as well as others in the Bay Area. So a lot of resources that we're pulling into our plan. Like I mentioned, community outreach and involvement is very important. So this is just some of the things that we have done so far. This is just a small amount of the local events that we've attended. I think Whale Fest and Pride are worth noting. This image here is from Whale Fest. So you can see, those stickies, or people kind of went up to our poster and said what they were kind of most interested in. So you can see just the number of people that came to talk to us by the number of all those stickies on that board. We also put out a flash vote survey. We had over 300 respondents, and we've contacted over 110 community groups throughout Pacifica. I do also want to note that city staff put together a survey, so we're continuing to use that as we do engagement, so continuing to get input through that survey. And then we've also, our task force meetings and our subcommittees, they are open to the public. Just a little plug that, we do have our meetings here on the third Tuesday. Our next one's on July 16th, if anyone wants to join. And we have had a lot of youth engagement. I think we all know we're gonna have public comment from one such ambassador tonight, so that's been very exciting. They've really shown that they're passionate. I'd say about, the past 3 to 4 meetings, we've had some members of the public, and specifically from the youth community, involved. So what is next for us? We are looking to, as we're putting together our list of our proposed goals and actions, we're going to start getting input from the community on these different items, make sure that we haven't missed anything, and then start prioritizing them and getting a draft together for further review from both City Council and the public. Do you want to thank City Council for the hard work with budget approval? I know that's always a really long process, but through that, we are having some consultant support to have meaningful community engagement to really make sure that the time that we're spending with these different community groups is well spent, and we're really making sure that we're hearing from them and incorporating their feedback, and especially kind of harder to reach groups of the community, making sure that their voices are heard. And we're also going to be getting technical support. I mentioned the greenhouse gas emission reduction calculations, so we'll be working to get some consultant support for the more technical aspects of that. Also, just want to note that some ways that we can, set ourselves up for success with this is, having continued city support with staffing. Just want to give a shout out. Gabriel, our Civic Spark Fellow, is not here tonight, which, he has been an amazing support for the task force. We really appreciate everything that he's done for us. So really hoping that we can continue to get support both from him as well, if there's opportunity to have additional Civic Spark Fellows to make sure that we have consistent staffing help. Also, there's a lot of benefit. I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation the historic amounts of funding available. And so, we already know kind of what areas the report's going to focus on, and I listed some of these in the slide here. And so starting to apply for this funding, especially if it's for planning, it just makes so much sense to set the city up for success in achieving some of the actions that we're putting into the climate action and adaptation plan. This is my favorite slide. So, even though it's just me up here tonight, this really is a team effort. So a lot of our task force members are here in the audience tonight. So I just want to say, thank you to City Council for choosing this wonderful group. And if you guys could stand up so that we could thank you all for being here. So it truly is a team effort, and it's so thankful that we have this amazing group of volunteers that City Council selected to work on this important project. And then, of course, Elizabeth, thank you for your support too throughout this process. So with that, happy to take any questions that City Council may have.
Questions? Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Monica, and thank you for your leadership on this committee too. And thank you everyone who's here tonight and for your work individually and together. I wanted to ask a little bit about the data and what you're getting. I don't know if that's from RICAPS or you mentioned Rincon too. Is that data that's really specific to Pacifica or more regionally that's just kind of adjusted a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really depends on what specifically the data is measuring, right? So as far as emissions from electricity, that's very specific to Pacifica, right? We can tell with PCE, with PG&E, how much energy is getting delivered to Pacifica, and then we can apply emissions factors to that. For transportation, they tend to do it more at a county level. So I believe MTC is heavily involved in that process, and they say, here's VMT for San Mateo County, and then Rincon allocates that out, in the appropriate way to say, okay, here's kind of Pacifica's contribution to this county-wide number. So it's, it really emphasizes the fact that, working as a larger community as part of the county makes so much sense because, we're all kind of trying to drive down these numbers together that impact all of us.
Yeah, the transportation was one I was really questioning because we have such fewer public transportation options than other cities, right? And so, anyway, just curious whether you think the data is helpful or whether you need anything else that can give you more specific information to Pacifica.
Yeah, we're trying to work with the data we have and kind of highlight areas where we could benefit from digging in more. Learned about some new data this morning that might kind of help us get more specific, but haven't really had time to dig into that yet. So it's possible there's other data sources out there that we can dig into to get more specific in certain areas.
Okay, thank you. And I was impressed with your little chart with the stickies and noticed that most of them were on nature-based solutions. And I'm just curious, are you having to explain what that means to people? Or is there really a collective understanding of what that is?
I'm seeing nods from the group that was there. So I'm thinking that means that people are understanding what that is. So that's, and I will say too, we talked to RICAPS to get some of their input, and they also said, make sure to use language that's accessible. And they said nature-based solutions is more accessible to people than kind of this resiliency, adaptation, kind of these big words with a lot of different meanings. So it seems like there's kind of a general understanding of that at this point.
And then I just finally, I'm pleased to see that you're looking at other coastal cities, and I'm just curious if there are some good examples of cities that have incorporated nature-based solutions so far.
Yes, yeah. We're looking at a lot and kind of picking and choosing, and I think something we have to keep in mind is just the different resourcing. I think one of the coastal cities that stands out as a big example for us has been San Diego, but we understand they're a very different resource city than us, so how do we kind of take what they've done and scale it to Pacifica?
Right, okay. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you, really. And Nancy Tierney came out to the Pacifica Collaborative and presented there, and that was really, really helpful. And so I really appreciate the community outreach that you're doing. I think it's super important. And as you were speaking, I was looking at all this information. I'm just so grateful for all of you and for your excitement and your knowledge and your expertise that I definitely do not have. And so it's really important that we have you, and the work that you're doing is really important for us, and so I can't wait to learn more and how we can support the effort, and just thank you.
Hello again. We had the opportunity to meet, air quotes, this morning on a Zoom that I forgot to mention earlier, so I'll mention it now. There's an organization in San Mateo County called Sustainable San Mateo County. One of the things that I encourage fellow council members and all of the community to take a look at is their sustainability dashboard. That's what we were looking at. You're probably familiar with it through PCE. There are various measures there, and to your question about data, the data sources are footnoted, and I'm just the quick exposure that I had to it today, I want to get in and look at more. One thing that I find really beneficial is that it is tied to census tracts. So it's the city, and you can click on your city and get city data and click and compare to other cities, but you can drill down to very specific areas of your town. One of the things that they have that I think some in town affiliated with Tree City Pacifica will be very interested in is the tree canopy tool. There's quite a bit there that I need to learn more, and I know I'm going to have some questions, and I did raise a few today in the meeting. In terms of vehicle miles traveled, I don't know what our data sources are, if there are ways through, I guess, DMV or something, I don't know, to assess, okay, so you have a car registered. Is it an EV? Is it a hybrid? Right, so we're traveling, but how is that vehicle fueled? Because yes, we are challenged in terms of public transportation on the coast, and many people are in their own car. I know that you serve on commute.org representing us, and what a challenge that is to get carpooling and those kinds of things going. So there's some of those, I'm looking forward to hearing more and seeing in the report that you put together in the proposals for our policy, how those issues can begin to be addressed. I just want to echo Councilmember Beer. It's very exciting, I say this when we have the committee and commission report outs each year, and it's so great to hear from you this time, to see the folks that we have the opportunity and the pleasure to appoint to these committees, and to see you digging in and doing the work. And knowing, I mean, our first exposure to you is, here's the letter of application or the resume, and you know, individually we all look at that, and I know I go, ooh, this person has this background, and oh, that'll match well with this. And then sometimes you know the people. Sometimes you're even encouraging people to apply for these things when they're, public transportation experts in the audience who, outreach experts in the audience. Thank you for your service to us and to our community. It was great seeing the public outreach happening at Pride. And that was, they never stopped. There were people walking right up and 2 and 3 deep, asking, hearing, talking, sharing. It was really very, very enlightening and very beneficial to see all of that happening.
You reminded me that I had a PCE meeting over the last 2 weeks also.
Oh, see? Okay, now you can tie it in.
I think you already did a wonderful job tying it in, frankly. And I'm going to echo my colleagues and say thank you and keep it brief. Thank you.
And thank you. And I'll be interested in reading the report when it comes out. I won't be here anymore, but I'll still read the report. So thank you.
Do we take public comment?
What?
Yeah. Do we take public comment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there, first of all, we do have a card on this item.
Yeah.
Calvin Chan.
Good evening again, City Council members, City staff, and City Manager. My name is Calvin Chan. As a member of Pacifica's Youth Advisory Board and Terra Nova High School Student Council, I am one of many youth who care about our local city and environment. First, thank you to the task force who has welcomed me and other youth into meetings. So as a student representative, climate change and environmental preservation is one of the biggest areas of concern for youth. Pacifica's built environment, such as transportation, impacts youth every day and adds to our greenhouse gases emissions. Our youth community will also be hurt the most by climate change, as it's our future at stake. But youth can also innovate unique ways to sustainably develop Pacifica with the right support from you, City Council. So Pacifica has a powerful opportunity to engage youth in climate action. Us youth want to be involved in climate action in city government. The former 2014 Climate Action Plan only says that they do outreach or contacts youth organizations. Right now, we are engaged in CAP task force meetings, but we also want to be part of the implementation process too. If you could look at my visual, you'll see that engaging students fulfills both key strategies of the 2040 General Plan and the 2014 Climate Action Plan. So how do we take a step forward? We can take a step forward by actually engaging and partnering with youth organizations throughout the implementation process. In our high schools, Pacifica's high schools, there are 4 areas which the city can work with. One, the city can form a partnership with their student councils through the student council's elected representatives and commissioners. In classes like AP Environmental Science, students can analyze specific policies of Pacifica's general plan, such as potential nature-based solutions, public transportation, carpool encouragement for school activities. And then for student activities, cross-country running team is particularly interested in the bicycle and pedestrian plan for Pacifica. And our mock trial team can debate the pros and cons of each proposal. Our student clubs like the Environmental Club, Marine Biology Club, Students in Action, Women in STEM, they're all interested in climate issues, and they seek volunteer and advocacy projects, such as reducing the dependency on single-use plastics in our city. So what's truly powerful about this is that we can implement this all in the next year, so it's ready to go by the time the new CAP is released. And this will improve the lives of Pacifica's youth today and create a better, cleaner, more beautiful city for generations. Thank you, City Council, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Perfect timing. We really can't communicate with you on this, but thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Remy Tan.
Good evening, and honored City Council. Just want to commend the committee on really some great work. I was on the 2014 committee, and these guys are doing an outstanding job. It kind of puts us to shame, really. And it's amazing that when you're doing public outreach and the youth engagement, which is something we only really scratched on back then. And, they did start with the, using the 2014 plan, which we had a pretty well-known consultant as, helping us out back then. So it was a really good basis. One of the things that surprised me when we did that was the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases at that time was actually Pacificans getting on airplanes down at our nearby airport and flying, all over the country, all over the world. And that was quite surprising. So I'm wondering if, the current consultant will be accounting for that in the new updated plan. As I do live under the flight path for SFO, and I noticed there's a lot more flights, and did work at the airport, and there are a lot of expansions, gate expansions, and things like that. So we are flying a lot more, hopefully there's improvements in sustainable aviation fuel, and that should be accounted for in the report, as that's a lot of airlines are seriously looking at that as well. The other thing is, I was glad to see that on the Pacifica newsletter that the 118 shuttle to the BART station's coming back as an express. So hopefully that will reduce greenhouse gases and gives a good link to BART. So that's hopeful, and hopefully, that will be accounted for in the new plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more cards. Elizabeth, is there anyone on the phone?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, so I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to council. And I don't think there's an action.
Look, could I ask if we could get a copy of Calvin's remarks? Would that be possible? I would love to read them.
Okay. And that was receiving a report. So thank you very much, and a lot of good information. And we'll move on to item number 10, which is approve a resolution authorizing 5-year street maintenance improvements. Oh, wait, sorry. Before you guys come up, we need to take 10 minutes. We'll be back at 9. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, thank you for asking.
Item number 10 is to approve the resolution authorizing 5-year street maintenance improvements. And Director Peterson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Lisa Peterson, Director of Public Works. With me here today, I have Mei Wei Lee. She is a PE and PhD pavement engineers with Nichols Consulting Engineers, so we had some great expertise on this project. And we're going to be talking about our 5-year street maintenance improvements for fiscal year 25-26 to fiscal year 29-30. So our discussion tonight will be based on the report. We'll talk about our previous 5-year street maintenance program, also the results. Also, what council has heard before, but just to remind everybody out there in the public, what are those key elements and industry standards for a pavement maintenance program? So everybody can understand that, and talk a little bit about our pavement maintenance software program, which is called Street Saver. And finally, we're going to talk about our proposed new 5-year street maintenance program that has been developed by the city and with NCE's expertise. So first of all, just to talk about our previous 5-year street maintenance program, the council may remember that the first 5-year program was approved in 2020. And this was approved in October, and we completed the program actually in 4 summers. So at the end of this summer, we will have completed that program. And we, completing also 2 years of that program in 1 summer allowed us to increase our pavement condition index, because of course when we're doing that, it means that all those pavements that we're fixing are then not dropping in condition. And it was very successful, the 5-year program. I think it exceeded our expectations, so it was a good process we put in place. The pavement condition index increased from the poor condition category of 39 to the good condition category of 53. So that's a total increase of 14 points, which is really, quite a good result. And definitely we benefited by having our expertise from NCE. They really are known for being premier pavement engineers in the Bay Area. And the developed program premise, as some of you may remember, because you were on the council at that time, was to use the slurry seals to keep our good streets in good condition. And as we know, this is absolutely the best and most cost-effective way to maintain your pavements, because it's very cheap to use slurry seals to maintain your streets. But the city also had a number of streets that were in the poor condition category, and it made sense to develop a program that also addressed these streets. And what we did is we capped these streets that were in the poor condition category using cape seals to stop them from falling into those very expensive reconstruction category. So the seals tend to last from 5 to 7 years, and after the first year of the program, NCE recommended, and I had also used in other cities using rubber, including rubber in the cape seal mix. And what this does is actually can extend the life of the seal, and also it's very environmentally friendly because you're using discarded vehicle tires and you're putting it in the mix. And it acts almost like a jarred rubber band over the street, so it helps to prevent the reflective cracking from coming through too. There was some concern initially whether we could use this in Pacifica because cooler climates, sometimes the product doesn't work as well, but we did a pilot program with it on one of the years and it worked very well, and we've been using it ever since. And we've had excellent results. So that will actually help to keep those pavements in the better condition for longer. So we're happy about that. And at the end of this 5-year street maintenance program, we'll have resurfaced 43.5% of the city streets in a 4-year period. And that's the end of this summer period. However, as great as that is, we still do require additional funding for some more robust treatments. There are just some streets that are out there that are not going to be able to be addressed with seal coats. They're beyond that. And as a reminder related to our best practices for street maintenance programs, so the first thing that we do is we always use a pavement software program in order to obtain a high-level view. And this is something that actually is required by the state in order for us to get our street maintenance funding. We use Street Saver. That's the #1 program in California, I believe, and also within the Bay Area. I think every Bay Area city uses it. The reason that the state wants you to do this is because they understand that it's difficult for us, to be able to put together a program by ourselves without the use of an algorithm to figure out how we can get the highest pavement condition index for a network with the funding that we have. And that's what the program does for us. So it gives us this sort of high-level view. And then from there, what happens is we have an engineering consultant like NCE that comes in, and they will look at every single street that comes out of that program to do an in-field engineering assessment of it to see, does that really make sense that that treatment should be happening on that street? We're also going to look at trying to catch those streets that look like they're going to fall into more costly categories. We don't want those to fall into those costly categories. We're going to try to catch those streets. We try to group streets based on the maintenance treatment that's going to be happening, because of course that's more cost effective. We're going to look at, what are those upcoming projects? So if there's CIP projects out there, which actually are treating the surface of the street, we have a couple projects out there that are doing that, including the Sharp Park pedestrian improvement projects, also the Esplanade project, project. So, of course, we're not going to do those streets, that, and anything else where maybe we're going to have a project that's going to be ripping up the roadway. So again, the program goal is to use the funding that we have to achieve the highest overall pavement condition index for a network. The old-time strategy, and Pacifica did this, many cities did this, was this thought process of trying to fix your worst streets first. And although intuitively it makes sense, but actually from a pavement maintenance standpoint, that will lower your PCI. Because what happens is then the rest of your network drops because you can only take care of like a couple of streets that are in maybe rehabilitation type of condition because it's so expensive, and you'll see that in a slide that I have coming up. So what we're trying to do is we're going to try to catch those streets when they're least expensive. For the green arrow on the right side of the screen, we want to catch the streets when they're least expensive to fix. As you can see from that, that's a pavement degradation curve. So what happens is the minute it kind of hits that curve, you can see how fast it can drop into a very expensive repair category. And that is why it's so important to grab those streets before they fall into those expensive repair categories. So StreetSaver, again, is the software program we use. There's some key elements, just to remind everybody. It was developed by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, for effective funding use. They basically say if you're not using a program, you don't get money, because we want to make sure that you're doing this right. They also request that you do visual condition assessments of your streets, usually every 2 to 5 years here in Pacifica. Typically, we're given a grant in the form of a consultant who will come out every 2 years that will assess visually all the streets, and they'll put together a report that the council has seen in the past. Sometimes it's just called our street maintenance report. We have one online that's for 22-23. It's also been called the budget options report. Sometimes it just depends on who the consultant is, the report they call it. Basically what it is that visual condition assessment of all the streets, and it also gives you budget options that you can do. How much money will get you, to what PCI level. And you put those visual assessments into the program, and along with the budget that you have, the treatments that are already put in the program, the decline that happens to those pavements over a period of time is all happening through an algorithm that's in that program, and it allows you to determine what is the best overall PCI that I can get for the funding that I have. And you can see here for the pavement condition index, this is the rating that we use. So for 70 to 100, that's going to be considered very good. 50 to 70, that's going to be considered good. 25 to 50, that's going to be considered poor. And then, of course, anything below 25 is going to be considered very poor condition. Many of those streets are streets that you actually going to have to find pavement overlay funding for, because some of them just can't have a seal coat. They're just in too bad of condition. So talking about our new 5-year pavement program, we had great success with our last program, so we're going to continue with this philosophy of bookending. This is where we're maintaining our good streets in good condition using slurry seals, and as mentioned, this is the best management practice of pavement maintenance, because that's your cheapest way to maintain your pavement network, which frankly is the most expensive thing that the city owns and maintains, is your street network. And then additionally, you're going to use the stopgap treatments to take those poor streets and put cape seals on them so that they aren't dropping into those very expensive reconstruction categories. Again, using the rubber cape seals for the longer lasting treatments, and then also adding rehabilitation treatments as feasible. Again, these are very expensive, so we're trying to add them in as we can, but there's only going to be a few added in, throughout the course of the 5 years. Again, you can see in the photo, we're trying to bookend those good streets, keep them in good condition, bookend those poor streets so they're not falling into reconstructions. As you can see from this chart, and degradation curve, again, it's just reinforcing this point that you want to get on your streets when they're in the good condition category with slurry seals. You can see that's relatively cheap at $4.50 a square yard. As you're dropping down into reconstruction, you can see it's going to be almost 40 times more. So, you go from $4 to $167 a square yard. Huge difference. And so that's why we're coming in with this stopgap treatment. Let's get on those streets. Let's cap them with these rubber cape seals before they drop into these very expensive repair categories. So our new program, we have a total funding of about $2.2 million per year. So 1.65 of that is going to be from SB1, Measure W. That's the big chunk that we're getting from the state and also from the county. About $550,000 is going to be coming from some of those new pavement fees that council put in place, cut fees for the pavement, also impact fees from vehicles, including the recology. And then we had an additional $900,000 from wastewater cut fees that were put specifically into the Valley Mar and Rockaway area. And as council will remember, there are a couple I&I repair projects, rehabilitation projects on sewers that are going to be happening in both the Valley Mar and Rockaway area. So what wastewater did, we had our wastewater engineering manager went through, made an estimate what he felt those cut fees were going to be. Now, and they may end up being more. If they're more, then there'll be more money that would go, towards the Valley Mar Rockaway area. But based on his estimates, because this is going to be a bore and jack project, he was assuming, which means they're not necessarily cutting the whole street. They're cutting pieces of the street, and then they're jacking the pipe underneath the street so they don't cut as much. They made an estimate of about $900,000, which really helped add some additional streets to those locations, including some rehabilitation in those areas. So this funding that we have, the $2.2 million per year, does prevent a significant drop in the PCI, but the PCI does drop a small amount, 2 points in that 5-year period. Now, we are going to be addressing 30% of the city's street network over a 5-year period of time, which is great. And then we'll have the total network covered at about 74% in 9 years, not including these other streets that are getting resurfacing based on other funding that I just mentioned. But this is a huge achievement for the city. So basically 75% of the streets will have some sort of treatment on them, some sort of resurfacing. And that's great. It's a great achievement. But again, we need to remember that a majority of these are seal coats. Seal coats don't necessarily last as long. This slurry seal, rubber cape seal. And additionally, we do still have $19 million worth of streets that were not selected. And when you look at those streets, almost 50% of those streets have a pavement condition index of a 10 or lower, which means that those are streets. And then, of course, we have streets that don't have paving on them at all. So all of these streets are streets that we need to find money for. So it's important for the city to continue to look for these funds for more robust treatment so we can actually do these asphalt overlays, because there are streets that are going to require them and they cost more money. To give you a visual on this, you can see where we came from. So we made some great progress, went from a pavement condition index of 39 and then went up to 53, covering 43.5% of the streets. 5-year program that we're proposing keeps it pretty steady, but does drop a couple of points. So we dropped down 2 points. We'd be covering 30.2% of the streets. But one of the things I did want to show the council, just as sort of a data point, is if we had funding or additional funding to put in the streets, and I use this number because it will get us up to a 65 PCI, but if we had a chunk of money that we could put into the streets, you could actually get the streets up. If you put in 29.5 million, we could get the streets up to a 65, which is excellent condition and probably where most of the cities are around us, so that's probably where we want to be. And what that would do is allow you to take a lot of those streets that I just mentioned, those streets that currently are 10 and below, and get those streets taken care of. So even though we make great progress, it is important for us to note and understand that we still have a big lift ahead of us, and we need to try to come up with those additional payment dollars so that we can address those streets that are going to need a little bit more help. So with that, that's the end of our presentation, and the recommendation tonight is for the council to approve the resolution authorizing the new 5-year street maintenance improvements. May we and I are here. We can answer any questions that you may have.
Questions from council?
Yeah. So thank you for that. So in 5 years, 74% PCI, that's what we're projecting?
So
$9 million.
in 5 years, we'll have covered almost 75% of the streets, and the PCI will drop slightly down 2 points to a 51. So we'll still be in the good condition category, but it will drop slightly.
Okay, sorry. And frankly, as I was trying to read this, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
I saw Olympian on the list, though, yeah?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know.
Like, the top three I've been angling for a while, and that's amazing. It looks like Valmar is getting a little love out of the deal.
Yes, yep.
And Rockaway's not quite ready to be scheduled yet. Did I read that correctly? Or-
Rockaway's in there.
Is in there also?
Yeah. So
27, right?
That's what it was. I was
Yes.
looking at one map, because one map is, okay.
right, because we're trying to get
Maps
those.
go by years, and so I looked at one map, thought I saw it, looked at the other map, didn't, and okay.
The goal for those areas is to get the work done first before we get in and do those streets, right? So that's why those are coming a little later. And I believe in talking with Manager Patton from Wastewater Engineering Manager Patton, his thought was that probably in 2027, they would be able to get that work done, and that's why those streets are scheduled when they are, because you don't want to do your streets and then come in and cut them up.
Okay, so the only question I have left, Winona?
I'm sorry?
Is Winona going to be,
That's a big no.
it's a big no?
Yeah, that's like in
Okay,
30 years.
it's the stretch goal.
So we do have some streets that don't have any asphalt paving on them, and puts us in a little bit of a more difficult position because it's not really street maintenance, because the streets never were done to begin with. But again, this is what I was talking about, that we do need to look at the bigger picture that's out there. There's a lot of streets out there, even streets that were paved, that are going to need asphalt overlays, that may need reconstruction, that streets that don't have any asphalt on them that we need to pave. And that's why it's so important for us as staff and the council just to also have that perspective that there's a big need out there for more robust treatments than we've been doing. And we've been doing a great job, increasing the PCI. We're going to keep it at a certain level, but to get to the next level, we're going to have to treat those streets that need asphalt on them.
And so I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot by asking this question. If you don't have a specific answer, no problem. The point was well taken. It's apparently $167.75 per square yard of reconstruction rehabilitation. For a road that has no asphalt, is it the same price tag or is it higher than that?
It would be a reconstruction. It's basically building a new street. So a reconstruction is a new road.
So it's about on par?
Yeah.
Okay, so the stretch goal past this 5 years. Or if somehow we find a way that maybe revenue comes in one form or another, we can get to there quicker.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Thank you very much. And I know that I've been, talking to you about these, at least Rockaway for 5 years, and I think Olympian and Valmar kind of worked its way in. So that we've gone up 14 percentage points is huge. It's nice to be able to say we're not the single worst streets in 101 Bay Area cities. Yeah. Thank you for the work you've been doing, and it's paying off.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of questions about Valleymar, of course. So for starters, thank you for including Valleymar and Rockaway and Pedro Point. It's a miracle, really. I remember when I was a small child and they finally paved some of Valleymar, and we went out there on our bikes and roller skates. We were so happy. And I was little, like 10, maybe younger, yeah. And so this is great. But I do notice, so I understand if you pull up the map for Valleymar, I understand why my street won't get paved, and then Amapola, that makes sense to me too, because that would be a reconstruction as well. But I'm curious about Angelita and Juanita and why those were left out.
Yeah, so again, and again, this is part of the pavement maintenance program.
Yes.
And I know that sometimes it's especially hard for residents to understand. But what the program is doing, it's picking up streets that it feels it can afford to pick up. And the cheaper the treatment is, the more likely it is going to pick it up. And as I recall, Juanita and Angelita, that, they need some work. So, I think those were, beyond just seal streets. And anything that's going to be requiring additional work, that's generally like a rehabilitation, reconstruction. The program is not likely to pick that up. And so, again, that's where we were talking about that, we need to come up with extra funding to kind of address those streets. Now, the other thing, that's important to note is, we also did do an estimate of what those cut fees were. And when we had the cut fees, we put them into doing some of the rehabilitation work because we know, that's in that area, that's something that we need to get done, so that's where those dollars went. So, should the cut fees come in more, then that also can be assessed at that time when this program comes up. So maybe they go in there and they say, wow, we can't just do this Bourne Jack. We actually need to, completely cut the street from one side to the other. There might be additional funding that comes in, and in that case, then those additional streets that need more love could be looked at in that area.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. And then the more that I can hear that, the more language I have around it, the easier it's going to be for me to explain to the community.
Yes.
And especially those two streets, because I'm a little baffled by that, just because they don't appear to me, to my eyes, which is not your eyes, that they would need to be reconstructed. But
Yeah, and it could just be grind and overlay.
Right.
Which is also more expensive than a seal.
Okay. Thank you so much for including our neighborhoods. It's really wonderful.
And then additionally, I'd like to add, I know that in the past, and City Manager Woodhouse can speak to this as well, there have been some tranches of funds that have been dropped into the pavement program in the past over the years when there's been additional money that the city has had. And so that can also be, additional way that we can get in some of these streets that need a little bit more love.
Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions about, as we look at the maps, we look at the table, and we see the intention for various fiscal years moving forward. What is the day-to-day within the capacity within Public Works for potholes or even sort of bigger than potholes? I forgot what you called it, but it's sort of like this Band-Aid, or I don't know, that's not the right word. It's a saddle or some name like that for a big patch, like a whole side-to-side patch. Can you speak a bit about sort of how we fold that action into this overall process?
Yes, sure. And so what we've done in the past, and we just did some this year, so, and I think 2 years ago, we have basically what we call a dig-out program, where we go through and some of these streets that, have bad areas, we need to get in there, do a little bit more work that don't get into the program. We have, and maybe like we put $100,000 or, $150,000 in those programs, and we'll go out and we'll do that patching work, exactly what you're talking about. And that can actually make those streets way better. And we have been doing that, I think, about every 2 years. We've been going out there. We've been getting a list of those locations, twofold reason. One, because it takes our staff a lot of time to have to go out there and work on those streets all the time, right? And then, second, it makes sense if we have some additional money in the program. Again, we have, more cut fees that come in. We have more Measure A funding that doesn't get, spent. Those are funds that we can look at a year, 2 years out, and we come up with those little programs that we have done where we do that patching on those bad streets so those people actually do get some relief.
I know, I should have asked this question before. I know we're in the middle of a wastewater update, a project in Lower Lindemar. I remember we talked about how do you define Lower Lindemar? It depends on who you ask in some ways. But I think we're in the process right now of that kind of a program working with residents, and I'm trying to remember where we are with that. Is it done? Are we in the middle of it? Are people getting this stuff done right now with laterals and with our replacement of our wastewater?
Yeah, so the sewer project down there, we have a contractor on board now, and they have been doing significant outreach to the community. They did have, a meeting, but additionally, they've been doing additional outreach to the community to try to get those folks on board for replacement of their laterals. So they I think they were doing another letter and also another door hanger, and they were having their staff going out door to door, knocking on the doors to try to get residents interested. So that's ongoing right now. They're trying to get as many people as they can to get involved in that program, and obviously that's what we want, right? We want as many people as possible to join in and get their laterals replaced, because that also is part of the problem.
Right, that, and I always think about those laterals in terms of street cuts and how we want to, we have the street cut fees that we did put in place, but the goal is not to charge people for street cuts. The goal is to have it done prior to, so there's not a need for the street cuts. And
yeah, and I think the other thing with that program, and it's unfortunately it's just sort of the way that it turned out with this program. But the good news is with this the sewer program that's getting put in place, the project, a lot of it, again, is bore and jack. It's not just straight cutting the street. And, for those in the audience who don't understand what that is, that means what they do is they just cut a piece of the pavement. So it's like a 4x4 square. And then they actually take the pipe. It's actually pipe bursting. So they'll take a pipe and they actually, hydraulically, or either through, jack and pull method, they'll actually pull that pipe through the existing pipe. And what that does is it saves your street. So you don't have an entire trench down every single one of your streets.
Right.
Yeah.
Christine?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. The software is super interesting and how it helps us manage all that. I was just looking at Lower Lindemar too, and so I think, this is on packet page 167. I think the streets where we're doing that work are colored gray, which is the, up to 2024 project. So I'm assuming that's, so it's not in the next 5 year, that's
Right.
a current year plan that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And then just to clarify, so some of the maps have a surface seal category and then some have surface seal and rehabilitation. Is the rehabilitation the rubber cape seal, or is that more major work?
That's going to be your grind and overlay, and that's why you see so few of those, because of course that's a very expensive treatment. But some of those streets, we just can't cap them anymore, and we need to get in there and put in, because it's important to note that when you're doing an overlay on those streets, grind and overlay, that's a 20-25 year treatment. So of course, that's the more we can do of those, the better.
Right. And are those somehow, I wish all the list of all the streets were like mapped of, where the really bad ones are so that we could see that visually. But does the software take into account like the more major arterial roads that,
Yes.
sort of get people out of town? Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, and that's an important point. The program does give a weighting to streets. So arterial roadway is going to get a bigger weighting and is going to be more likely to get picked up by the program. Also, a collector street will get, sort of an in-between rating. A residential street gets the least rating.
Right.
Again, one of the reasons that the program leaves so many of those, 10 and below residential streets, because they're not getting weighted high to get picked up, because they're really not going to do much if you fix them to increase the pavement condition index of your overall network.
Right, okay. And then, so you said these have like a 5 to 7 year life on average, and this is like a 10-year program. Are we basically starting over again?
Yeah, and
mostly focusing on the same streets.
it's a great question as well. So you'll find that seal coats last at different lengths, and also based on the amount of traffic. So your residential streets sometimes actually tend to last a lot longer, whereas you'll see a seal coat on an arterial street disappear pretty quickly.
Right.
Also, now that we're using the rubber cape seal, I think has been a great add to our program. Rubber cape seals, I think, can easily last up to 10 years, and I've seen them last up to 15 years.
Right.
So I think that's really going to help the program as well.
So that might give us some more money to
Yeah,
fix some of the worst
yeah.
streets if we don't have to do those as often. Yeah, okay, great. And then just how many times can you do a slurry seal? Is there a limit?
Slurry seal,
Grind?
That's an interesting question. I've asked that same question. I mean, slurry seal, generally, you can do, a number of times, right? Until the point where slurry seal isn't really working anymore because you're getting cracking in the roadway, right? And then maybe you're going to go to a rubber cape seal. And this is, probably a good one for May-Wee as well. But I have been told in the past that, and when I've asked cities that question, or other cities that use rubber cape seal, how many times have you used a rubber cape seal? And I did talk to one city that said they had done it 3 times on their streets. I don't know, maybe as an expert PhD, maybe she'd say that's not right, but I did hear someone tell me that.
Yeah, I think that usually we see like a local agency, they can do either like a solid seal, maybe like a 3 or up to like 4 times, because they will still build a lot of like material nearly age. So we kind of keep building like different layer until a certain time we need to kind of grind out to kind of fix the profile again. So usually the cap seal we see like maximum of 3 times. And then solid seal, I heard the agency probably do like a 4 or maximum like a 5 times. And then you reach a point you need to do some like a neon overlay or the grind out material, especially to the pavement age.
So lots of them.
Yeah, so at some point, 20 years down the line or so, we might have a lot more work.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely, and we have to keep that in mind, which is why, sort of the last slide that shows what we could do if we had, a big tranche of money.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there streets that aren't in Pacifica? Like somebody has told me Genevieve was not really in the city of Pacifica. Is that true or not true? Maybe that's not being fixed just because it's in really bad condition.
So all of the streets that are in the city of Pacifica that are in our pavement maintenance program. So there are a lot of streets that are not getting picked up because they're in very terrible condition. And
Okay.
yeah, that was sort of my conversation about the $19 million of streets that were not picked up by the program, and almost 50% of them have a pavement condition index of 10 or less.
Okay. That's why then. Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay.
Right now.
Okay. We have 1 yellow card. Remy Tan.
Good evening, honored City Council. Urge you to approve this plan. It makes a lot of sense to do the proper maintenance with the slurry seals on the streets to keep them in good shape. Actually, I had a question on one of the streets in the 400 block of Bancroft. They came out and did half of the street, and the other half is in really poor shape. So I'm wondering the kind of algorithmic logic behind doing half of a very bad street. So, thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth, is there anyone on the phone?
No, there are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. Would you like to answer that question?
I probably want to look into it. I think Remy knows how to reach me, but I believe with that street as it's coming to me that it was actually a patching job that they did, and half of the street was in pretty bad shape. But, I can look into it, Remy, and you have my number.
That's by Lynn Adams' house, and I know they've had flooding issues because of some street issues.
Yes, and so I know that street, I think that is the street then. We actually had a contractor that came out and did some patching work, but just such a large area of one of the sides of that street was in such bad shape. That's why that got done. It was just a patch.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to council.
I'm just a very specific, I forgot to ask this before. I'm looking at the table on packet page 162. It's the 2526 project. If you look at Roberts Road, which is near the bottom of the list, there's abbreviation W/O, and I don't know how to read that. Can you tell me what that means?
162.
Without?
That's what I think it means, but I'm like, does it mean something in street language that isn't?
Oh, this is like the west of some intersection.
West of.
Yeah,
That's what I was talking about. I was like,
Yeah.
without?
Yeah,
I'm like,
because
yeah,
that's-
without Fassler, because Roberts isn't Fassler. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no
West of, got it.
Yep.
I know we're always going back to like the dirt roads, but I gotta say, even the curb cuts at the end of Winona have improved it so much, because there was just this big gaping hole that was wrecking our cars. So even that is a beautiful improvement. So they've done a great job out there.
And I have to say thank you too, because I've lived in my house since 1979, and it was nothing ever happened on my street. And the president of the Fairmont Homeowners said, "You by far have the worst street in this area." And every day I look at it and go, wow, this is beautiful. I mean, I know it's weird, but this is just beautiful. And I don't hear the trucks going over the potholes going,
Yeah.
It makes me sleep better.
I appreciate the education. Thank you very much. I remember when you were here before, and I learned so much at that time. And now when I'm in other cities and I'm seeing the work that's being done there, where they, just had a slurry seal, and I know what that is, and they haven't had the painting, done after the fact. When I was going to ask about the software, or how if at all, are things like bicycle boulevards factored in? Is that part of the algorithm, or does that just happen as a function of them being either collector streets or arterials?
That's correct. That's exactly how it's factored in.
Okay, great, thank you.
Tiger?
Yeah, I'm recalling an arduous journey up Lindemar Boulevard in which I was trying to carry a friend's mattress on the back of a truck that I'd personally tied the rope on, and how harrowing that experience was. And then Lindemar got paved. And it was like breathing air suddenly, and that's just on the day-to-day, trip in and out of wherever. And I'm coming after you in about 5 years for Alicante and Banyan, but in the meantime, over the last several years, I've got to watch Fassler being paved over and Redwood, which are very close to where I am. And it strikes me that with every street I see upgraded, there's a mental health component to it.
Mm-hmm. There is.
So it seems like a long, slow slog, but it also seems like as time is slowly passing, I'm seeing it. I'm getting to drive upon it. And thank you for the effort, incremental though it is, over time. Boy, is it paying off. Christine, I don't know if you have anything to offer or anyone else. I'd like to make the motion when the time comes. Yes?
I have one question. When you brought up Lindemar, I remember the Lindemar project because in my mind, it's identified with something that was funded through the county, and it was some special machine that grinds up the street and lays down the new street or whatever. And we had to get in line, or it was a grant or some kind of thing. Is that a process that's incorporated into this, or is that something we look for outside of this process for our distressed streets that are more degraded? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the one type of street that we often are able, or sometimes able to get grant funding for, are arterial roadways. So I'm not exactly sure what happened. It may have been cold in place recycling, which is where they're grinding up the existing asphalt, laying it back down, using it as base, and then they're overlaying over it. I don't know exactly what happened to that street, but there are more opportunities for grants on your arterial streets, and that's why we were actually able to get a grant, as you recall, on Sharp Park Road for $1 million. That was from Anna Eshu's office, which that project will be coming up, and that's the advantage of arterial streets. So that's why we were able to get grant for that. Typically, you're not going to be able to get them on residential streets. It's very difficult.
I see, thank you.
Yep. In that case, I move we approve a resolution authorizing 5-year street maintenance improvements.
I'll second.
Please vote.
With the motion made by Councilmember Big Stick and seconded by Councilmember Beer, the motion for item number 10 passes unanimously.
Thank you. We look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Item number 11, resolution of the City Council of the City of Pacifica calling and giving notice for holding a general municipal election to be consolidated, with the city's next general municipal election on November 5th, 2024. And City Manager Woodhouse.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vaterlas and council members, Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager, and I'll be giving a brief presentation about this item tonight. And I'd like to also mention that Brian Mora is on Zoom with us, and he's a strategic services consultant with Regional Government Services that is also assisting the city on this topic. So here's the clicker. What I'd like to provide tonight is some background information about some of the community input and during our budget development process and the Pacifica discussion and community priorities that we've received about services and in the context of the city's finances. A few details about the mechanics of the proposed update to the transient occupancy, hotel lodging guests tax. Tonight's action to place it on the ballot requires a 2/3 majority vote, so 4 members. And if it's placed on the ballot, the vote in November for this type of general tax requires a 50% +1 by Pacifica voters to pass. I want to reiterate that the action the council is taking tonight is not to endorse, oppose, or levy a tax. Only voters can decide on that matter. It's to simply put it on the ballot to allow voters to decide on it. And if adopted tonight, this measure would be placed before the voters in November. So a few pieces of information regarding the process we've gone through. As the council is acutely aware through our budget that was just adopted and the financial forecasting that we've done is that, and actually I'll tie it to the presentation that was just given about our streets program and the significant capital investment that's needed over decades to come, is that Pacifica continues to face long-term financial challenges to develop sustainable finance strategies to identify the service priorities and needs that the community would like to see. Regarding community input, as I mentioned, we launched both the Pacifica discussion with input over 1,000 responses to that. In addition, we did 2 community surveys of over 980 Pacifica voters. And Pacifica residents have overwhelmingly prioritized funding for services such as police, fire, 911 emergency response services, street and pothole repair, youth and senior programs, adapting to sea level rise, and keeping trash off beaches. So those are a lot of the service priorities identified. And in the recently conducted survey, 64% of respondents said that they would support a simple majority approval local funding measure to update the TOT tax, the hotel and lodging guests tax. A few details about the TOT, again, the transient occupancy tax, is that this is a tax that's charged as percentage of room rate to hotel and lodging guests. So that's important. It's the hotel and lodging guests that pay this, not the hotel businesses themselves or the lodging businesses themselves. Our current rate at 12% generates almost $3 million a year. In California, across California, transient occupancy taxes are charged in 430 out of 483 cities in the state. And in San Mateo County, 15 of 20 cities have the TOT. Many of the 5, I believe, I don't have the list right in front of me, but I believe that the 5 that don't, just really don't have hotels. And some of the trends related to TOT is that in recent years, cities have been increasing their rate to 14 or 15%, and in at least one city to 15.5%. And there's a chart that I'll show, or it's in the report at least, that shows where other cities are in the county. So the 3% proposed increase to TOT here would amount to $720,000 per year in additional revenue if it were passed by the voters, increasing from 12 to 15%. And again, this is a general fund revenue, so it applies to all city services. Here's the breakdown of the TOT percentages in the county. I won't read through them. We're in the 12% category currently, and our other coastal neighbor, Half Moon Bay, is at 15%. And the largest amount are at 14%. So the proposed language that would be on the ballot that the council is considering is that shall an ordinance updating a transient occupancy tax paid only by hotel and other short-term lodging guests to a 15% rate to continue funding vital Pacifica services such as police, fire, 911, emergency response, street, pothole repair, youth senior programs, adapting to sea level rise, keeping trash off beaches, and generating approximately $720,000 per year in additional revenue until ended by voters and subject to annual audits be adopted. A few points about other key features of the ordinance is, again, this modernizes Pacifica's TOT to a 15% rate paid by guests. The collections start date at the new rate would start 10 days after certification of the ballot results if the ordinance is adopted, and the proceeds from the TOT ordinance, as is the current city's practice, would be deposited in the general fund subject to audit requirements of the city. There's a long, detailed recommended action. I won't read through all of this, but this is what the recommendation is for tonight's action. And that concludes the presentation, and I'm available for any questions, as is Mr. Moore.
Questions, Tiger?
Yeah, There are a couple questions that came in from a community member. So this community member differentiates between mom and pop short-term rental operators and corporate-owned short-term rental operators. And so the question is this bad for the mom and pop STR operators in Pacifica? I would think since the cost is passed to the guests of the STR, it shouldn't have effect on a mom and pop operator, but Liz, any insight you could offer?
That's correct. This is charged to the guests, and so I can't comment on whether it's bad or good depending on what the operation is, but the mechanics of it is that TOT is paid by guests.
Okay. The other question here is how much will it cost for a ballot measure and who pays for it? The further part of the question is, are we going to spend a bunch of money just to lose to Airbnb? Presumably, in this instance, they're implying that Airbnb would fight the measure, who have deep pockets and can spend untold amounts of money fighting our small town.
So the question was, how much does it cost to put it on the ballot, I think? Yes. So City Clerk Coffey had provided me with the estimate that we got from the County Elections Office back in April regarding measures, and the incremental costs for, and there's a range, and these are just estimates from the Elections Office as well. So the incremental costs, because there's a cost for the 2 council seat elections, and to have an additional measure on the ballot in addition to those 2 council seats, it raises the elections cost, which the city has budgeted for, from, at the high end, $56,000 to $157,000. So it's about a $100,000 cost, and that's pretty standard for the elections office, the way that works, printing of all the materials, and City Clerk Coffey could probably speak to more of the mechanics of that cost.
Okay. And how much, again, did you say this has the potential to bring in yearly?
It's yearly, it's 720,000. The additional 3%.
So it's essentially a $100,000 startup cost. And again, the concern was, well, if Airbnb doesn't like it, there's a battle and we might lose $100,000. But if the outcome is we win, I mean, that's a big assumption to begin with, I think. But that 720,000 would be very helpful. Thank you.
Christine?
I know you've been reaching out to the hotels in town, and I appreciate that, to let them know that, we're considering putting this on the ballot tonight. And I was just looking at San Francisco's TOT percentage, which is at 14%. Has there been any financial analysis done of, if we might start losing some people to that extra percent, that might choose not to come here?
No, there hasn't been any analysis of that. I do know that in the course of history, as TOT has increased, there's often that claim that's made. Often cities do not see that impact. Concerning San Francisco, a lot of cities have additional charges on hotel rooms, and I know that's the case from San Francisco, and Economic Development Manager Tara Schiff might have more detail about that. San Francisco has 14%, and then they have other charges on top of that guests pay.
Okay, plus their parking.
Resort fees,
Yeah.
parking.
Okay, thank you.
Mary?
I don't have any questions.
Sue?
Sorry. I'm sorry, I did have one
go
more.
ahead.
but
Oh, I
can
thought
wait
you
for
finished.
No, I did say, I think I was finished, but, so one of the other questions, I guess, in the resolution, it says, the proposed measure will include accountability requirements such as annual financial audits and public spending reports. I'm guessing our hotels are good about doing that, but what is the reporting right now that we're getting from the short-term rental operators? And would that change with this measure?
So can you point to where you're referring to? Are you talking about the auditing of the city's financial records?
Yeah, I'm sorry, this was in Sherry Chan's email, so I can go back. You can ask Sue her question, I'll go back and try to find it in the resolution.
Okay. My question is for Manager Schiff and/or for Mr. Mora, and it's in regard to the rates in other surrounding communities. We see on packet page 175 of the staff report a data table, and I don't know what the source of the data is. And I'd like to know how was that researched? And I know this is something that would be anecdotal information, but I'm wondering if there's any awareness or anyone has information on how recently other cities have increased their TOT and/or if we anticipate seeing any other measures in the region coming up in this regard. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but I just thought I'd ask because you never know.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
someone talked to somebody.
Either Mr. Moore could probably speak to the direct source of this, but it's, the state finance department has this information about the TOT that's charged. So I'll leave to Mr. Moore to be more specific on that. And
right.
Go ahead,
Well,
Brian.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. And to the council member's question, Michael Coleman, who is a financial consultant to the League of California Cities, put together a table of all of the TOT rates through, I believe it was the year 2019. And then what I did is I went through all of the elections from 2019 to the present time to update his information for all of the cities in California. And so the table that you see is current as of today's date. In terms of other cities, the only city I'm aware of in San Mateo County that's looking at a hotel tax increase is the city of Menlo Park, which has not yet put a proposal on the ballot for November, but they have discussed raising their TOT rate from 12% to 15.5%, which would generate another $3.2 million, I believe, per year for them. In terms of the trends, the council member is correct. Within the last, I would say, 4 to 6 years, a number of cities, not just in San Mateo County, but also across the Bay Area and throughout the state, have upgraded their TOT or modernized that rate from 12% to either 14 or 15%. The one city in California that's gone beyond 15% is Palo Alto, which has a rate of 15.5%, which is the highest in California. But you are right in your observation that the trend, as it were, seems to be to move from the 12% level to either 14 or 15%. A number of cities have done that ahead of this discussion in Pacifica.
Thank you very much.
And Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Okay, so I did review the recital and the ordinance, or the resolution and the ordinance, and I believe that public comment is referring to the 9th recital in the resolution that says, whereas the proposed measure will include accountability requirements such as annual financial audits and public spending reports.
Right, and that's at the bottom of packet page 177.
Thank you. And that, that refers to section 2 in the ordinance itself that provides that any auditor's report shall include an accounting of the revenues received from the TOT and shall be presented to the City Council annually and made available for public review. So that recital correlates directly to the provision in section 2 of the ordinance about review and audits.
So I'm sorry, is that a new requirement or that's something that's already
I think that's what is occurring now. And so this just specifies it in the ordinance.
Okay.
And so the city wouldn't be necessarily reporting on STR revenues, although it may. It would be reporting on the TOT revenues, which includes hotels and lodging and other types of accommodations in Pacifica that pay into the TOT.
I guess what I've heard before when we were discussing the STRs is that they're not always forthcoming with this information. And maybe I'm mixing up the information specifically that we're asking for them. Is that true, Mr. Woodhouse, or are we able to get that information from Airbnb, and VRBO, and
So any STR operator who has a permit in the city, as part of that permit, is required to pay TOT.
Right.
Is that your question, or?
But are they actually reporting? I think we were having trouble getting some of the information from some of them, right?
What you might be referring to is that through the Airbnb system and their voluntary revenue reporting system, it is difficult to get at the breakdown per STR. They won't provide that. So, that's sort of a different topic, I would say, than, it's just a matter of, and perhaps during the council's discussion about STRs in our ordinance update, there might be some changes that could occur that would make gathering of that data easier for the city, but you can imagine a pretty complex auditing process as compared to audits of other, like hotel operations and such.
Okay.
But they are required to pay, and if they're not, then they wouldn't have a compliant permit. And that gets to the enforcement component of STR update ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I should have, after Mr. Mora gave his report, I should have turned to our Economic Development Manager, Tara Schiff, who kindly came to the podium to give us some information, and then she didn't have an opportunity. So thank you.
No problem. Tara Schiff, Economic Development Manager. I believe I wanted to answer your question in regard to the time period of when the neighboring cities, I don't think Mr. Mora answered that question. I can tell you in regard to Half Moon Bay, they increased their TOT from 12% to 15% in 2022. So I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I am going to now go to public comment on this. So Aaron Clark, followed by Remy Tan.
Hi, I just agreed to speak for a friend of mine that can't be here tonight. I think she wrote everybody an email on the city council. And she was concerned because obviously if you raise the cost of staying in town, it's going to impact the people that own the business. I don't even know why you would insinuate that it wouldn't do that. Of course it does. If it's more expensive to stay in Pacifica, people will stay in South City. So to business owners, it's a problem for sure. The other thing, I disagree with any tax that takes money from a few people to spend it on a bunch of people. It just bothers me that people want to pick the pocket of their neighbor. And if you're going to use it for the general fund, it should affect everybody in town, not a select few of hardworking people trying to run businesses. There was a time when the people of Pacifica voted for a tax. It was called the safety assessment, I believe is what it was. And the problem was that, people voted for it because it was supposed to fund police and fire. And no sooner did it pass that the city laid off 2 firemen and completely destroyed the city's credibility, which the city seems to like to do all the time. And people didn't reinstate it because they had no faith in the city. If the city's going to lie to people, then people aren't going to vote for a tax. And I think the thing the city needs to do is try to establish some credibility with the community, and then maybe the community would agree to a tax if they really thought the city was spending their money wisely. That's kind of what it comes down to. It's really easy to pick out a small group of people and say, hey, we can attack this group of people, we can take a bunch of money from them and fund it. And to me, it's just it's a sad commentary on human conditions that people would do that to their neighbor. If it's not worth paying for yourself, if you're not willing to dig into your own pocket and pay for it, then you don't really need it or you don't want it that bad. So the city needs to make it clear what people aren't going to have if they don't come up with this money, and then put it to the people. If they don't want it, then they don't want it. But if it's going to be in the general fund, everybody should pay for it in town. That's just the way I feel about it. So that's it.
Thank you. Remy, and then Kimberly Finale.
Good evening, Honorable City Council again. I urge you to pass this measure. Pacifica is behind many of the other cities in TOTs, and we, as you can see from the previous item, we need money for, items like the street repairs and fire police, and, basic services. So this is really key. I also urge the City Council to maybe consider an amendment and actually raise that to 15.5% to be, on par with Menlo Park and Palo Alto, which just recently raised their tax. I think we heard from the staff, and because it's such a expensive cost, to put this through the ballot, we might as well get the highest amount we can, and then we don't have to worry about it for at least a little while. And probably wouldn't worry that, some of the neighboring cities have lower ones because Pacifica's hotels are typically by the ocean, which is extremely desirable, and yet the rates are much less than they are in San Francisco. Plus when people book the hotels, they only see the rate of that's being charged by the hotel or Airbnb. That gets me to the next point. I think we need to vigorously enforce the Airbnb or short-term rental. Because from the report that we heard from the meeting a couple weeks ago, there's a lot of short-term rentals. They're not even registered, and it's a simple way to enforce that is just by having somebody look at what's posted on VRBO, Airbnb, and then anything that's not paying a tax and not registered, we go after them. San Francisco did that and basically got rid of 10,000 short-term rentals in one fell swoop when they decided not to have unhosted rentals. So it's possible to do that, and we're a smaller city here, but it's a lot less, but it's still a significant amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly?
Good evening, council members, city manager, city staff. Kimberly Finale here, speaking as a private citizen. To me, at first thought, when I read this and I'm listening to the presentation, seems like a bit of a no-brainer that, of course, we are in a tourist destination town, and most certainly some of the visitors to our town are utilizing our services, and especially in the event of an emergency, we're, our emergency services are going to come to the rescue of anyone who is in need of assistance. And so it seems to me appropriate that visitors who are staying here and might possibly be in need of those services would pay their fair share in some shape or form. So a tax does seem reasonable. But my question would be, and I understand that you won't be answering my question, but I would ask if city manager could speak to, because I think my question would be, what is the argument against this? I'm not really sure. To me, like I say, it seems like a no-brainer, but what is the argument against it? Why? What would be people? I heard the other commenters' point of view, and I understand that, but I'm wondering if there is an argument um, that goes hand in hand with your presentation, so that we could perhaps better understand why someone would oppose this outside of the commenter that we heard from. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Elizabeth, is there anyone with a raised hand?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for deliberation. And Tiger?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Did we consult with the members of the bid before bringing this tonight?
Yes, we offered to meet with all of the hotel managers and ended up having responses from 5 of them, so had meetings with 5 to inform them about tonight's discussion.
And I apologize, I'm trying to word out the acronym, so Business Improvement District, which would be the managers of the hotels. So I'm sorry, please say that again, and what was the result of that meeting, or what can you tell us about that meeting?
Well, I don't want to put words in the mouths of the hotel representatives, but it was informational to be just very transparent that the council was going to be discussing this tonight to consider putting it on the ballot. And they were very thankful about the outreach and, had questions about details. And we digressed into other topics as well, like the hotel bid, which is not related to the TOT. So most found it informative and were thankful for the outreach and transparency.
Okay. Are you able to elucidate whether or not there was a positive response from a majority of them, or is that a bridge too far?
I think it ranged, but again, I don't want to put words in their mouth. That would be me judging from reaction. So I think it was more about being transparent and clear.
Okay, appreciate that. So another community member asked a question. Are you aware of the argument that might be against? Should we vote to put this on the ballot?
So let me see how to answer this, because I think that's a very broad question. I mean, I think I could reply how Howard Jarvis would reply regarding a tax measure. I mean, I think there's many different perspectives, as one of the members of the public commented on, about, taxing. So I'd rather just keep it general and not hypothesize what an argument against would be on this measure.
The bottom line is we're trying to take care of our coffers. I don't disagree with the idea that we don't want to harm businesses, and I also agree with the sentiment that we would like everyone to agree to make this city stronger by willingly contributing. That being said, I've been to a handful of hotels over the course of my days, and it seems like no matter which hotel I visit, there is some charge in there by which I'm contributing to the community that I am visiting, which I think is something I've always been willing to pay, especially given that I'm enjoying somebody else's community. And so it's one thing to pay for an accommodation, but there's an extension from there into the community that I am visiting. So I also appreciate that. I also appreciate that we're talking about 15% up from 12%. So to try and keep math simple for my head, out of $100, that's $15 rather than $12. And I think that if somebody is going to be visiting us and they would be willing to pay $12, I think an extra $3 isn't going to break it. Or, extrapolate that to $200, $300, $400, whatever the price tag is for a hotel room. But bottom line is I think that that's a relatively minor extra added cost. And while I do not want to harm businesses, and anyone is welcome to correct my simplistic math, I think that that is a relatively, I don't think that's enough of a cost that it would dissuade somebody who's looking to visit. Thank you.
I've never asked what the TOT tax is at a hotel, nor the resort fee, nor any of the other fees that they add on. I pay them. So I don't think I'd say, oh, well, wait a minute. I can stay in Daly City, or I can stay on the ocean in Pacifica for $3 different. So I know what I'd prefer.
Yeah, and I was actually happy to hear the response from the hotel owners, because I know how hard it has been with bid to engage with them, because they're so busy. So I think that it's really good that they got the information and we haven't heard from them. And so that tells me something. And I also do think it's a no-brainer. So, and I haven't heard any opposition in other communities as far as I know.
And I just want to say to the commenter about raising fees otherwise and having the community pay for it. I mean, we did do that 2 years ago with Measure Y, and I don't know how much we can share. We did poll about that in an infrastructure bond measure, and it wasn't polling well, and this one did poll well. So I do think we do need to do more education to the community about the needed cost to maintain our roads and our sewers and, all the infrastructure and money that we just don't have funds for right now, right, to understand that we as a community need to invest in our own community. But obviously, we're not ready for that vote and discussion right now, so keep posted. Yeah, we have work to do.
This is a little bit tough in the sense of exactly the point that Councilmember Bowles just made in terms of communication. I think there's a legitimate confusion and not clarity on the part of many in the community about what is TOT versus what is the bid. What even is the bid? What does that mean? So I would encourage, and it's not for tonight per se, but I would encourage a more regular form of communication about this. We regularly speak of being a visitor-serving economy. We regularly talk about how, certainly working with the Coastal Commission, there's interest in low-cost visitor-serving services. And so, weighing all those things, keeping costs low means not raising taxes, for example. And on balance, I look at the chart, and I understand Half Moon Bay raised their TOT recently. I don't know if Mr. Morak can elucidate any further on any communities. I always go, well, Half Moon Bay is Half Moon Bay. I mean, they're right close to us, but, they do have a bit of a different structure. For example, the Ritz-Carlton. It's always a thing. When we looked at the STR issue a couple of weeks ago, there was a chart that showed TOT and how much was raised and how much was raised from which points, and it really didn't have the granularity to break it down, but the average together makes, the outlier of the Ritz really does change the picture for them. We don't have that many hotels. I was shocked to realize how many Half Moon Bay has relative to us. I didn't even realize that, which I'm like, duh, how did I not know that? So I'm concerned about, over pressuring, I don't know what the right word it would be, the few that we have. I was looking at the rates over the hill, trying to see, well, would it affect the issue? Would I want to just stay closer to the airport, for example? What would that cost me? And the rates are pretty consistent with Pacifica. In some cases, they're less. In some cases, they're more. And I know that this is a fluid, demand-based pricing structure. These are not fixed rates that never change. They do change. They change when there's big conventions or big sporting events and such. So I concur with what the mayor said. I don't generally look at TOT until I'm paying my bill. And then I go, whoa, but I pay it. and I concur with Councilmember Big Stick. I realize I'm making an impact on the community that I'm in. I'm using their roads, I'm using their facilities. So I do feel it's fair to ask visitors to pay a share. We certainly have our property owners in town paying their property taxes and that share. So it's a conundrum. I don't think, for deliberation purposes, I'm prepared to go with the suggestion of 15.5%. I debated internally, I'll be honest, maybe we should go for 14. Maybe it shouldn't be 15. Maybe that's a stretch for us. But knowing the results that we got from our polling, it looks like the community would support it. And I will say I'm kind of a wacky, when it comes to election results. I think because Shape the Future is so easy to look at different measures, so I'm always looking at school bonds and parcel taxes and what's happening in Millbrae, what happened over here, what happened over there. It is a rare thing to see a TOT not pass. I can say just my own personal experience. I think communities understand generally this affects visitors more than me, the resident. So for that reason, I'm inclined to support this at 15%.
Anything else? Someone want to make?
I'll make a motion. I move to adopt a resolution calling and giving notice for holding a general municipal election to be consolidated with the city's next general municipal election on November 5th, 2024, and submitting to the electors ballot measure to update the city's transient occupancy hotel lodging guest tax imposed on short-term stays by increasing to 15% by amending Pacifica Municipal Code, Section 3-7.03, establishing the policies and procedures for such an election, requesting San Mateo County to consolidate with the city's general municipal election, statewide general election, and to provide election services, directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis and authorizing the filing of rebuttal argument.
Second? I'll second it. Please vote.
With the motion made by Councilmember Beer and seconded by Mayor Vaterlos, the vote passes unanimously.
And it is 10:25, and we are adjourning the meeting.
Hey, we're out early tonight.